The man tightened his grip on the soaked bag strap, rainwater dripping steadily from his clenched fists. Cold rain poured harder. Determined, he walked forward, ignoring the burning pain in his soaked feet. Each step felt heavier. His heart pounded louder than the rain, knowing this confrontation was inevitable. Stopping before the tall building, he inhaled deeply. The truth awaited upstairs, hidden behind locked doors. The elevator chimed. 7th floor. As the doors parted, his clenched fists tightened, preparing for answers. The elevator door slid open. He locked eyes with a masked stranger standing ominously before him. The masked figure stood completely still. Cold eyes stared directly at him, sending an unsettling silent warning. His mind raced. Who is this person, he wondered, uneasy about this unexpected, unfamiliar encounter. He cautiously approached his apartment door, eyes darting back. Never seen them on this floor before. Unlocking his door, he stepped inside quietly, muttering to himself under tense breath, "I'm back! Finally!" His eyes widened in shock. A sudden burst of blue light erupted from the darkened apartment interior. An ominous blue glow enveloped the shadowed figure standing silently. Unearthly energy radiated across the cold room. Without hesitation, he stepped forward cautiously. His instincts screamed danger, but his determination refused immediate retreat. Hours later, life continued normally outside. People gathered, eating together, unaware of the earlier night's incident. Detective San sat quietly, exhausted. Memories of last night's encounter replayed, unsettling his deeply troubled thoughts. Shin-Hei-Su sat quietly, lost in thought. A colleague approached, breaking the heavy silence with concern. Trying to lighten the mood, someone raised a glass, shouting, "He got promoted today! Drinks are on him!" Laughter filled the room. They toasted loudly, glasses clinking together. As the celebration picked up momentum, Shin-Hei-Su sipped his drink slowly. A dark figure approached their table, interrupting the lively atmosphere. It was Hei-Su's old high school friend, Huang Jung-Su. His sudden appearance brought immediate tension. Hei-Su stared ahead, thinking deeply. Huang Jung-Su, I came here today solely because of him. In high school, they trained together relentlessly at the same gym, building unmatched strength and trust. They were once inseparable, famously known as double fists. After graduation, life pulled them apart suddenly. Rumors spread. Jiangsu quit fighting and turned into a thug. Hei-Su needed to see for himself. Facing Jiangsu, Hei-Su spoke firmly, rejecting the reunion's warmth. "I don't dine with thugs," he declared, and Jiangsu smiled, unfazed. "Heard you're struggling, Hei-Su. Thought I'd offer a little help today." He casually slid a business card across the table. "No interest for friends. Call me anytime." Hei-Su slapped the card away immediately. His glare sharpened. He wouldn't accept pity, especially from Jiangsu. With unwavering conviction, Hei-Su stood. "I'd rather starve than borrow from a thug. Get out now!" Jiangsu's expression turned cold. Without another word, he locked eyes with Hei-Su before quietly walking away. Jiangsu stood up and left. Hei-Su sat silently, frustration building as his mind wandered restlessly. He rubbed his forehead, exhaling heavily. The room's noisy atmosphere felt distant amid his circling thoughts. A familiar classmate approached cheerfully. "Long time no see! Still living at Chae-Young's place?" he asked bluntly. Hei-Su shot back coldly. "What's it to you?" Tension quickly returned despite the attempted casual conversation. The classmate smirked. "You don't have money? Cramped house bothering you?" Hei-Su's glare sharpened instantly, irritation rising. The classmate laughed mockingly. "A beginner doesn't live in a fancy house anyway, right?" he teased carelessly. He took a long drink, then continued loudly. "Heard they call you excessive force expert these days." He smirked wider. Words spread everywhere. Suspended off and drowning in debt. "Need help from your rich brother?" Hasu's fists tightened. "What's filthier than thug money?" he muttered, glaring directly at his obnoxious former classmate. The man stood up, brushing his hair smugly. "Still the same. All pride, no results as usual." Hei-Su's eyes burned with fury. His voice was sharp. "Chae-Young deserves far better than you." Before anyone reacted, Hasu's punch landed. Dong Namcheol flew backward, blood spraying across the crowded restaurant. Without hesitation, Hei-Su grabbed Dong Namcheol's collar. His voice was low, cold. "Take it easy," he warned. He tightened his grip. Someone burdened by countless sins shouldn't dare lay hands on a detective. Dong Namcheol's face turned pale. Fear finally replaced his smug expression as reality hit him brutally. Corruption echoed through the courtroom. Despite being a victim, the woman officer was the only one punished. Rumors spread fast. He got promoted through his father's power, surpassing those with real qualifications, people whispered. Hei-Su restrained his anger. "Without evidence, I'm no better than a mad dog. Calm and calculated wins." He downed his drink, standing confidently. "Dong Namcheol," he called firmly, eyes locked onto his bloodied opponent. Dong Namcheol gritted his teeth. "A pathetic bastard like you dares to challenge me?" he growled furiously. Then late at night, the snack bar glowed faintly. A familiar white car stood quietly outside. Hei-Su leaned against the car, lost in thought. His cigarette burned slowly under the cold air. "I too," he muttered softly, remembering painful moments that shaped the burden he carried today. 12 years ago, after my father's murder was disguised as suicide, I swore to find justice. Now broken, burdened, Hei-Su chuckled bitterly. Just a detective drowning in debt, he admitted quietly. A man approached Jesus swiftly. He nodded slightly and said, "You arrived quickly. Follow me inside." The car roared onto the wet road. Tires splashed through puddles, headlights cutting through the heavy rain. Inside the car, the driver glanced at Jesus. Breaking the silence, he asked, "Are you his wife?" Confused, Jesus remained quiet, his mind lost in thought. The rain pounded harder against the windshield. Snapping back, Jesus muttered faintly, "Ah." His eyes darkened, mind preparing for whatever awaited ahead. Jesus sat quietly, staring through the rain-soaked window, his mind swirling with bitter thoughts. The driver sneered, laughing. "Such a waste of a woman, ha ha ha, that guy's just a complete mess." Jesus' expression darkened. He clenched his fist slightly, eyes narrowing. "What did you just say?" he asked coldly. The driver chuckled nervously, glancing away. "I didn't say anything, just thinking aloud," he laughed. The car sped through the rain, headlights cutting through darkness, the destination drawing dangerously closer. Jesus sat quietly, the car's engine humming as tension silently built behind his calm face. A thug in the front seat laughed crudely, making offensive jokes about Jesus' girlfriend without restraint. Jesus' face darkened. He clenched his jaw and ordered coldly, "Hey, pull over! Now!" The thug flinched as Jesus' voice sharpened. Fear crept in. "All right," he muttered. "Let's just talk." The car swerved to the roadside. The air thickened, something dangerous was about to unfold. The man stepped out casually, unaware that Jesus' rage simmered just beneath his still posture. He mocked again, laughing under the rain, confident that no one would dare challenge him here. "Ha, bastard," he scoffed, shaking his head. "You really pulled over just to argue in rain?" Jesus glared coldly. "Apologize now and leave before I get angry," he warned without raising his voice. But the man lunged, shouting, "You were going to die anyway, you bastard!" Blinded by arrogance, the attacker revealed a hidden knife and lunged forward, his movements quick and filled with intent. Jesus' eyes narrowed. "You carry a knife?" he muttered, shifting slightly to prepare for impact. He braced himself. "Whatever your identity is, suppressing you comes first," he growled, stepping in hard. With a precise punch, Jesus struck the attacker's face, blood bursting as bones crunched beneath impact. The man's body collapsed backwards, his face torn open, blood trailing through the rain-soaked air silently. Jesus stood over the unconscious attacker, rain soaking the pavement and tension still gripping his body. Another man approached slowly, fists trembling. "It's not over yet," he warned through gritted, shaking teeth. Jesus turned sharply, eyes locked on the second threat, already preparing for the next violent exchange. "Damn!" the man muttered, hesitating in fear. His legs shuffled backward under the cold streetlight's glare. Jesus clenched his fists. "Of all places!" he growled, frustrated that trouble always followed him here. Jesus stood silently in the rain, breathing heavy, knowing the situation still wasn't fully resolved. He reached into his pocket without rushing, fingers wet, searching for his phone through soaked fabric. He pulled out the phone and quickly dialed emergency services, thumb hovering above the green button. Before he could press it, an unknown number appeared, vibrating against his palm with sudden urgency. Jesus stared at the screen, his eyes narrowed. Block box. The timing couldn't have been worse, and a voice came through the phone. "And you didn't show up. Where are you now?" Jesus' eyes widened as thunder cracked. The voice wasn't normal. "What is this?" he muttered. His breathing slowed. Then, he whispered, dread rising. Something felt completely wrong about this unexpected call. Behind him, the thug groaned, struggling to rise, bloodied and defeated but still full of rage. Rain poured down as Jesus stood over the unconscious man, jaw tight, fists still trembling slightly. He'd heard of criminals faking chauffeur jobs, luring drunk targets to rob them without leaving evidence. Tonight, he was caught off guard, drugged, maybe, but his instincts pushed him to fight through fog. No one was around, no cameras, just him, a body, and the storm to mask everything. With blood washed by rain, Jesus turned away, knowing justice sometimes demanded breaking its own rules. He stood silently, phone in hand, rain falling hard. Doubt filled him. Should he really stay longer? His duty whispered, "Leave!" But the weight of unresolved pain, his father's death, rooted his feet in place. Clenching his jaw, he remembered the face from that night. Could this man be connected too? A van sped past. Jesus' eyes sharpened. A witness? An accomplice? He couldn't afford being seen. Alone in the dark, shielded by rain and silence, he weighed risk against the need for answers. He stared down at the motionless body, realizing burying it without tools would take too long. Even in panic, Jesus thought clearly he needed a believable alibi in case someone started asking questions. He gripped his head and shouted. Guilt surged. The man was a criminal, but still human. Images of the brutal moment replayed his fists, the blood, the silence after. There was no denying it. If he confessed, he'd lose his badge. At best, prison time. At worst, everything he'd built. He lowered the phone, heart pounding. Could someone like him still chase his father's real killer? Sighing deeply, he unlocked the phone and dialed emergency services with steady but reluctant hands. He reported the scene calmly, admitting someone was injured. He gave the exact location without hesitation. Kneeling beside the unconscious man, Jesus waited. The rain soaked them both, but he didn't move. Head bowed, he stayed silent. No excuses, no escape, just the weight of what he had done. She ended the call coldly, voice calm. "Let's break up," she said without giving any reason. Confused, the other woman asked nervously, "What do you mean?" Her voice trembled. "Did Appa say something?" He stood alone in the rain, listening. Her voice reached him through the phone, uncertain, tense. He narrowed his eyes. Dong Namshil's name surfaced. The pattern fit. He'd heard this warning before. She froze. What? The name startled her. She hadn't expected him to know about Namshil at all. Jesus clutched his head, overwhelmed. Her voice echoed. She'd chosen another man, another officer, over him. Then she mocked him. "He earns more, doesn't live for the job like you do." Rain poured as he sat alone, phone pressed to ear. His words were final. "Let's break up." The lighter sparked in his hand. Smoke curled upward. His chest tightened with every shallow breath. Gritting his teeth, Ha-Su inhaled hard. The pain sharpened. Everything betrayal, guilt, rage was crashing down inside him. The injured man stirred faintly. Jesus leaned closer, eyes widening. There was still a chance he'd survive. A concussion? Panic hit. Jesus cursed himself. How hadn't he realized it sooner? His hands trembled as he pressed against the wound. "Don't die on me!" he shouted desperately. Blood flowed onto his arms. He tightened his grip, holding the man close in the rain. His voice cracked. "Please don't die!" The world blurred, spiraling into dread and helplessness all at once. Paramedics arrived. Jesus stepped back in silence, watching them work quickly under the flashing emergency lights. They rushed the man to the ambulance. Jesus stood alone, soaked, his thoughts racing with uncertainty. The surgeon delivered updates. The patient's life was stable, but brain damage might still develop. "Let's go," a colleague said softly. Jesus nodded, overwhelmed by the weight of what nearly happened. His hearing date was set. If the victim died, Jesus could face years in prison or worse. Jesus was escorted through prison halls, every step echoing the consequences of his fateful decision. The sunlit yard looked peaceful, but inside him, despair had already taken root and settled deeply. A voice called out mockingly, eyes sharp. "Oh my, who's this?" Recognition sparked in the tone. Behind bars, the inmate smirked. "Aren't you Detective Shin Jesus?" The name carried tension and memory. "Yeah, you broke my arm once," the man said. "It never healed right. Still hurts now." The cell gate opened. Jesus stepped forward, surrounded by silent stares, tension already thick in air. "Go inside," the guard ordered. Jesus entered, unreadable expression masking the storm still churning within him. Inmates sat scattered. Jesus exhaled slowly, scanning the room. This was his new world, now prison life. Outside, the sun began to set. The world kept turning, indifferent to one man's fall. Wearing prison blue, Jesus stood still. The wind shifted. Tomorrow, he'd face whatever came without flinching. A group of inmates approached, laughing loudly. "Remember me?" One sneered, gripping a wooden bat. Another jeered. "Does the food suit your taste?" They circled him, clearly trying to provoke a reaction. Jesus turned slowly, eyes sharp and cold. He didn't flinch. His presence alone stopped them briefly. One inmate hesitated, whispering, "His eyes." The tension grew heavier as silence took hold of the group. The leader stepped forward. Do you still think you're the big shot?" His voice now uneasy. The inmate's voice roared across the yard. "Kill him!" Rage burned behind every word he screamed. Multiple prisoners rushed forward, their footsteps pounding against concrete, fueled by anger, fear, and old grudges. Jesus moved first. His fist landed cleanly, blood burst, as one attacker dropped without a sound. Standing tall, Jesus' gaze didn't waver. His calm eyes unsettled even the boldest among them. "You bastard!" the gang leader hissed, humiliated and shaking, but still burning with the need for revenge. Fists flew. Jesus fought back instinctively, surrounded on all sides, every blow louder than the last. Blood smeared his face. He wondered through blurred vision how things had spiraled this far down. He struck back again. Pain screamed through his ribs, but he refused to fall, not yet. Kicks landed relentlessly. His body buckled under the weight, his breath shallow and mind slipping. From the crowd, one inmate raised a weapon high. Jesus stared upward. Was this really the end? Jesus raised his arm, blocking the weapon. Blood splattered instantly, pain shooting through his entire body. Blood dripped to the floor. His vision swam, but a fire began building inside him again. Gritting his teeth, he stood up, rage burning. "Ah, fuck, I don't care anymore," he growled. Clutching a weapon, Jesus muttered, "My life's not over yet." His stance was shaky but unyielding. Another inmate rushed in, yelling, "Where are you looking? Get up!" and struck him in the face. Jesus gasped for air. Through blood and darkness, a voice echoed in his head, not yet his eyes opened. Rain hit his skin again. Confused, he whispered, "This is definitely..." He turned, realizing the scene. "It's that day," he muttered. "The same street, the same moment. Time rewound. The same van, the same criminals." Jesus was back alive before everything had gone wrong. He grabbed the attacker's collar. But that was the day. His grip tightened. This time, he'd change it. The man grabbed the officer's collar, yelling furiously under the rain, eyes filled with desperate fear. Struggling to breathe, the officer choked out a wordless cry, fingers twitching weakly toward the ground. In a sudden move, the officer drove a pen deep into the attacker's forehead, blood bursting. The assailant's body collapsed backwards violently, crashing onto the wet asphalt with a thundering impact. Regaining control, the officer spun around, slammed his fist into another enemy approaching from behind. The officer twisted the attacker's arm, forcing him down. Pain exploded through the man's shoulder, making him scream. Jesus tightened his grip, explaining calmly that police law allowed excessive force in specific, dangerous situations. The suspect panicked, unsure what was happening, legs trembling under the relentless pressure of the officer's grip. Without mercy, Jesus drove the man into the pavement, announcing his name and reporting the crime aloud. Realizing too late the man was a cop, the suspect cursed, bloodied face smashed into the street. Then Jesus stood still as the phone rang nearby, his eyes locked on the fallen man. He picked up the phone, confused by the sudden call, wondering if this was another trick. A voice answered, saying they were a driver arriving late, unable to find the original caller. The driver's message ended abruptly with a strange sound, something like a cut-off cry for help. Alerted by the tone, Jesus looked toward flashing lights, tightening his grip on the bloodied phone. Jesus answered another call as flashing lights approached, his expression tense but composed in the rain. A girl's voice came through, asking about a breakup. Jesus didn't understand what she meant. She asked if their father told him. Confused, Jesus hesitated, hearing only the sound of sirens. The police arrived at the scene. Jesus remained still, his eyes fixed on the glowing lights. The case was transferred. Jesus watched quietly as new officers examined the scene and detained suspects. Detectives reviewed evidence boxes, one of them growing suspicious enough to authorize a search of the driver's home. Inside, they uncovered disturbing trophies items belonging to multiple victims, confirming a connection to several unresolved murders. A diary titled Hunting revealed detailed plans on how he selected, approached, and intended to kill victims. His next move was killing Jesus, then following the address to find and murder Jesus' girlfriend. Luckily, Jesus confronted him first. The killer was arrested before even drawing his weapon to attack. News spread about the killer. Shin's violent arrest sparked debate about excessive force versus justified action. Despite complaints, the city canceled his warning and gave him an award equal to a promotion. Other officers praised Shin's results, even joking that no one handled criminals as thoroughly as he did. Yet, behind the praise, some quietly muttered concerns about his brutality and lack of restraint during arrests. Shin Jesus simply smiled, sipping his coffee. "Ah, well," he muttered, unconcerned with their opinions or doubts. Fellow officers laughed, congratulating Shin Jesus on catching a serial killer. His cold attitude had slightly softened. He quietly drank his coffee, reflecting on how unusual and surprising the week had been. Holding a slice of pizza, Shin Jesus grinned slightly. "It really is another miracle that I'm alive." On Saturday, a television host announced the results of the national lottery, drawing to the viewers. Shin Jesus sat at the table, hands clasped, muttering, "Please, let me take care of my debt." The winning lottery numbers appeared on screen. Shin Jesus' eyes widened as disappointment replaced his silent hope. He slammed the table in frustration, teeth clenched, before whispering the numbers again to remember them. Hands folded tightly, he whispered desperately, "Please, just once more. I want to go back." Another customer noticed him praying and asked casually if someone had died or something serious had happened. Ignoring the question, Jesus continued praying harder than ever, wishing to return and fix his life. At the station, an officer informed Jesus that the chief suddenly requested to meet him upstairs. Surprised, Jesus paused for a second. "The chief?" he muttered, unsure what this could be about. Colleagues nearby speculated quietly, wondering if Jesus had done something wrong or maybe earned a promotion. Thinking it might finally be good news, Jesus walked toward the office with a hopeful expression. He reached the chief's door and opened it, still unsure of what was waiting inside. The chief, calmly and unreadably, asked Jesus how long it would take him to prepare himself. Jesus stood firmly and answered without hesitation. 2 days would be enough to get ready. Jesus was surprised. He asked if this was serious. Joining such an army seemed unbelievable to him. The police chief mocked him, criticizing his reckless style and calling him an embarrassment to the department. With a shocked face, Jesus looks uneasy. She looks seriously at the police chief, with doubt. The chief lectured Jesus smugly, claiming that weak laws required harsher enforcement to keep criminals in check. He mocked past officers, calling one a corrupt rat who used violence and dirty money to manipulate outcomes. Jesus clenched his jaw. Despite suspicions, he regretted never finding evidence to expose the chief's shady past. Being transferred after years of service felt like punishment. To Jesus, this assignment was a silent demotion. As Shin approached the chief, the old man grew nervous, asking shakily what he was about to do. Jesus stood silently in front of the chief, his glare firm, concealing his rising frustration inside. He restrained himself. One wrong move now would cost him more than just a formal complaint. "Gangjin," he muttered. Remote location meant larger legal costs if things escalated physically again. He left the office calmly, realizing relocation would also distance him from the truth about his father's death. Outside, under bright daylight, Jesus clenched his fist, determined to pursue answers no matter where they led. Jesus arrived at the new station, surprised by its size. "Pretty big for a rural department." He stepped closer and muttered, "Must be a lot of cases," just before hearing shouting from inside. Inside, chaos unfolded. An angry man yelled wildly while officers tried to calm him and control the scene. Hae-soo watched the mess unfold. Officers struggled to contain the man while others barked back in frustration. A young officer noticed him, stepped forward with a smile, and asked, "What brings you here?" Hae-soo introduced himself calmly. "I'm Officer Shin Hae-soo. I'll be joining your team starting today." Before they could respond, chaos erupted again. A suspect vomited and screamed while an officer panicked nearby. Watching the scene unfold, Hae-soo gave a nervous smile, realizing how different this station really was. Shin Hae-soo stood in the hallway, silently recalling the chaos that brought him to this moment. From the back hallway, Officer Jiwoo rushed in, clutching her bag, clearly late and slightly panicked. She caught her breath, confused why her first assignment was here and why he looked so serious. Hae-soo turned slowly, introducing himself as the senior officer. She bowed awkwardly, still adjusting to the situation. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted nearby. Without thinking, they rushed forward, instincts taking over as danger approached quickly. Hae-soo stared quietly, thinking about his purpose, his eyes cold, hiding what he'd really been through. Ganon City had changed. Crime surged beyond control. The streets grew louder, darker, with fewer consequences. Even officers weren't safe. Injuries were rising. Criminals struck boldly, knowing the system wouldn't punish them properly. Despite this chaos, he didn't hesitate. He threw himself into the fray, tackling every threat head-on. Now reassigned, Hae-soo stood firm. This wasn't just another job, it was a war he had chosen. Lim Sung-young was called for assignment. She stood straight, ready, though still unsure about her new role. Her eyes turned toward the unfamiliar face. The man who transferred today, he looked serious, focused, experienced. "I'm Shin Hae-soo," he said. His introduction was simple, but his presence carried weight across the room. They entered the patrol car. Neither spoke. The silence held tension and the weight of unknown expectations. Sung-young took a deep breath, adjusting her earpiece. Her first official patrol had finally begun, for real. Sung-young answered the dispatch call, relaying injuries. Her voice was steady, though urgency lingered beneath her tone. Hae-soo listened closely. The situation was bad. Someone was bleeding, and the scene could quickly escalate dangerously. He glanced at the car's interior. Everything felt upgraded, clean, new, far different from what he remembered. Sung-young explained the changes. Their station was testing direct dispatch response units. Hae-soo nodded, absorbing the update. With the call confirmed, lights flashed. The car sped into motion, sirens echoing across the waking streets. Hae-soo gripped the handle tight as the car jerked. Her driving style clearly wasn't what he expected. She glanced over, laughing nervously. "Sorry, did that scare you?" He nodded slightly, still watching the streets carefully. They arrived at the scene. Crowds were gathered outside. Tension hung in the air, thick and visible. "Siren fading," Hae-soo muttered as he looked on. "These people, they don't even fear police anymore." Through the window, a man taunted someone on the ground. Smirking confidently, he showed no sign of fear. Sung-young rushed forward, voice firm. She approached the scene quickly, determined not to show any hesitation. The men turned, mocking her authority. One raised a glass, the other smirked with clear disrespect. "Miss, pour us a drink," one jeered. Their words weren't threats, but they held no respect either. She smirked back calmly. "These punks," she muttered, already bracing herself for what she knew would happen next. Her boot hit the ground hard, her eyes narrowed. Whatever came next, she was fully ready now. Sung-young approached the injured man, scanning the scene. He groaned softly, barely conscious on the rough pavement. Before she could respond, Hae-soo stepped in. Calm but firm, he assessed the damage quickly and clearly. "Call an ambulance first," he ordered. There was no hesitation in his voice, only urgent command and control. Sung-young acknowledged immediately. "Yes, I understand." Her hands moved fast, reporting the injury while Hae-soo walked ahead. The two offenders froze, one squinted nervously. "Him? He's coming this way?" The air suddenly felt heavier. The thug hurled a bottle, aiming straight at Hae-soo's face, hoping to intimidate or catch him off guard. "Get lost," he yelled, voice loud. "You'll die if you don't back off." His tone was serious, but Hae-soo moved fast. He caught the attacker's wrist mid-swing, locking it before the man could react. With one twist, the thug collapsed, screaming in pain. Hae-soo didn't flinch. His grip stayed firm and calm. The other man stood up, furious. "You bastard!" he shouted, charging forward with reckless anger and fists raised. The second thug lunged with rage, fist raised high. Hae-soo didn't hesitate. He met the strike instantly. A quick shift, a clean block, and the attacker's balance broke. His body slammed into the ground. Groaning, the man tried to rise, but Hae-soo was already pinning him down, calm and firm. "You're under arrest," Hae-soo stated, "for assault, harassment, obstruction." His grip tightened, ensuring no escape from accountability now. "You have the right to counsel," he continued. Sung-young approached, watching silently as justice was served decisively. Sung-young relayed their location through her radio. Her voice stayed focused as she requested an ambulance immediately. Moments later, sirens wailed through the streets. Help was on the way, drawing closer with flashing lights. The injured were attended to quickly. Bystanders stood around, murmuring, while the officers managed the crowded scene. Sung-young gave a quick report. "No life-threatening injuries," she said, watching medics move swiftly and efficiently. Back in the car, Hae-soo looked at her. His expression softened. She had done well today. Sung Young reported the latest update from Unit 4. Her voice was clear, focused on the dispatcher. The caller explained tearfully. She and her friend had gone out drinking, but something went wrong afterward. She returned from the restroom and found her friend missing, still drunk and unable to walk properly. Hey Sue, listen closely. A missing person case like this could escalate fast if not handled carefully. The woman added she promised to call after reaching home. Her voice trembled, eyes filled with worry. Hey Sue stayed calm and organized. Let's start with the basics. Check the CCTV near the location first. The camera above blinked steadily. It had captured everything. They hoped it held a useful clue. They gathered around the monitor. The footage played slowly as each frame brought them closer to answers. There! Someone shouted, pointing at the screen. The missing girl appeared staggering, supported by an unknown man. Sung Young asked, could it be her boyfriend? The woman hesitated, confused. Maybe. Or someone pretending to be. After reviewing the footage, Hae Soo and Sung Young concluded it wasn't just disappearance, it was something worse. Sung Young radioed in calmly, requesting to upgrade this to a kidnapping case. Victim last seen unconscious. Hae Soo gave details. Male suspect, hoodie and jeans. They had to act fast before the trail vanished. Backup responded quickly. Unit 201 moved in. Search teams were dispatched across motels and karaoke rooms nearby. The violent crimes team joined in. This is Code 0, now we'll take over. Stay alert, officers. Hae Soo and Sung Young kept moving. The streets felt tense. Their pace didn't slow for a moment. Another unit must be checking the motels, Hae Soo noted, scanning the area with practiced, calculating eyes. For cases like this, he explained, we start with the most likely places first logically and resourcefully. Sung Young nodded. I see. Ahead, a brightly lit karaoke bar caught their attention as a possible lead. They approached the entrance. Is this place open? She asked. Hae Soo replied without pause. Let's go inside. Hae Soo stepped inside, alert. Speed is everything, he said, eyes scanning every corner of the dark hallway. Loud music and laughter echoed. He waved down the front clerk, speaking with urgency. Start with the rear. The clerk panicked. I'm sorry, he blurted, overwhelmed by the sudden presence of two uniformed officers. Focus! Hae Soo snapped. Do you recall a girl matching this description entering recently with someone suspicious? He moved swiftly through the hallway, senses sharp. Every step brought him closer. One door looked suspicious. Hae Soo spotted a hooded figure walking away suspiciously. His instincts kicked in. Something felt immediately off. Excuse me, you! He called out. But the man turned sharply, eyes wide, and bolted instantly. Shit! Hae Soo hissed, breaking into a sprint. His voice echoed through the hallway, boots pounding the floor. Sung Young reacted fast, calling into her radio. Suspect fleeing. Male, hooded jacket. We're giving chase now! This is Unit 4, she shouted. We found the suspect, requesting backup immediately before he disappears. Hae Soo burst through the door, chasing the suspect. His steps were urgent, heart pounding with growing tension. Inside he froze. Blood stained the floor. What he saw made his chest tighten with cold dread. Lim Sung Young, he yelled. Call the ambulance now! His voice shook, urgency rising fast as seconds ticked away. The scene was horrific. Blood pooled beneath the victim. Sung Young's breath caught in her tightening throat. She gagged and stumbled back. The sight was too much, her training barely holding her together now. Trembling, she grabbed the radio. The location is... Her voice wavered as she forced herself to speak. Her hand tightened around her baton. This wasn't over. She had to act, there was no choice. Eyes steady now, Sung Young stepped forward. She wouldn't falter again. Whoever did this was still nearby. Hae Soo stayed by the victim's side. Radio the escape route, he ordered. Time was running out. Sung Young responded immediately. Got it! She lifted the radio, steady hands working fast through her distress. This is Unit 4, she reported. Suspect might have fled south from the karaoke room. Proceed with caution. Hae Soo gave chase. An armed killer on the run meant risk most detectives wouldn't face alone. And if he didn't stop him soon, another innocent could be dying just a street away. Sung Young rushed through the hallway, frustration creeping in. They had lost time, and time was critical. Hae Soo thought back regretfully. If only we hadn't wasted time with that drunk in the alley, or scolded the karaoke owner, he added, kneeling beside the victim's bloodied, unmoving hand on the floor. A faint sound escaped the victim. His eyes twitched open slightly, consciousness returning through sheer willpower. Back in the car, Sung Young's voice cracked through radio static. Where am I? The signal had changed. Hae Soo's breath hitched. Something shifted inside him. Time rewound, he was back, before the disaster even began. Realization struck. If I go now before it happens, maybe this time I can stop everything early. Determined, he glanced toward the familiar street. There will be time. This time, I won't be too late. Officer Lim, over there, he pointed. Sung Young looked surprised, but trusted his instincts without pressing too hard. He hesitated. If I say it's just a feeling, it'll sound strange, won't it? He knew. Hae Soo spoke calmly. From the scene layout, something's ahead. He had clearly seen this moment before. There's a karaoke room down that way, right? He asked. Sung Young nodded hesitantly, unsure of his certainty. We'll go now, Hae Soo said. If we hesitate, someone could already be in serious danger. He asked casually, do you bring weapons? Sung Young blinked. A taser? I have one. He nodded, serious now. Take it out, he ordered. She did without question, the weight of the moment settling between them. Jesus flashed his badge with authority. Please lock the door and wait outside. Right now! The clerk stammered, nervous under pressure. What? Ah! Yes! He nodded quickly and turned to obey. Jesus turned to Sung-young. Officer Lim? His voice was calm but firm, already planning their next move. Wait by the back door. Hold the taser, he instructed. She replied with steady confidence, yes. Jesus exhaled slowly. The moment was close. Everything hinged on the next few seconds inside. Jesus gripped the doorknob, certain. His instincts were sharp. This was the room. The suspect was inside. He kicked the door open fast, yelling, Hey! Damn it! Stay still! His voice filled the hallway. The suspect panicked. What the fuck? He screamed, scrambling backward as Jesus charged without hesitation. Behind the suspect, a hostage trembled. He turned wide-eyed, recognizing the uniform. Police? Are you serious? His face twisted with fear. The moment of surprise was gone. Now, there was nowhere to run. The suspect bolted toward the hallway exit. Jesus dashed after him, steps pounding hard against the floor. The chase twisted through flashing lights. Patrons screamed and scattered as the pursuit grew faster, tighter, deadlier. Sung-young launched into action, intercepting from the side. Her tackle knocked the suspect hard to the ground. Pinning him down, she cuffed him fast. You're under arrest for kidnapping, assault, unlawful confinement, and attempted sexual assault, Jesus added, approaching calmly. You're finished now. The hallway fell quiet. Justice had caught up. Jesus radioed in calmly. This is Unit 4. We've apprehended the kidnapper at the karaoke room. The officers outside glared. Hey, we've seen you before, one muttered. Didn't you break your arm? He deserves a beating, someone snapped. Just got released from prison 2 weeks ago for assault. Another detective added, rap sheet's long, no remorse. He was labeled mentally unstable but clearly dangerous. We saved a life, Jesus said firmly. Thanks for your support. Sung-young nodded, relief clear in her eyes. A hand extended toward Jesus. It was a gesture of gratitude, quiet but deeply respectful. They shook hands firmly. Around them, people watched in silence, understanding the danger that had been avoided. As sirens faded and streets cleared, calm returned to the neighborhood after a night of chaos. Sung-young glanced over. How did you know? Was it instinct? Her voice was curious, genuinely impressed. Jesus smiled faintly. Ah, he paused, uncertain how to explain the truth no one would believe. Jesus sat silently, glancing out the window. What? Ah! The strange sense of déjà vu lingered. The cityscape passed outside, familiar, unchanged. Yet something deep inside him buzzed with undeniable certainty and clarity. He looked at his hand. It's still so clear. The memories hadn't faded, they were fully intact. I remember the blood, the cold skin, he thought. My hand, it still remembers every second. This isn't a dream, Jesus confirmed to himself. His eyes hardened. I've returned for a reason. Jesus reflected silently. If only I had arrived a little earlier, things could have been different. He recalled the crime scene assault. Blood. Panic. Is it the place, the urgency, the pain? I can't depend on desperation alone. What triggers the rewind? He needed answers and fast. At first, I went back months. Now it's only an hour. His brow furrowed in thought. There must be rules, he muttered. And I have to find them before I run out of time. The police station doors slid open quietly. A determined woman stepped inside, clutching her bag tightly. She walked with purpose, scanning the lobby. Her expression was unreadable, focused, firm, and slightly tense. A desk officer noticed her arrival and stood up. What can I help you with? She replied calmly. Is Officer Shin Jesus here? The officer paused, recognizing the seriousness in her voice. Moments later, a tall man in uniform approached. I'm Shin Jesus, he said, locking eyes with her. She bowed deeply and spoke up. Thank you for yesterday, her voice firm, echoing in the room. Shin Jesus looked surprised, pausing briefly before replying with a calm smile. Ah, I just did my job. She smiled awkwardly, scratching her cheek. Yeah, she answered, her heart racing faster than she expected. Her hand tightened nervously around her bag strap. Her fingers twitched, uncertain if she should say more. He noticed her hesitation and asked gently, Is there something you would like to say? He waited. He glanced around the room, then nodded. Ah, okay, he said, sensing she had something planned. Without delay, he gestured toward the exit. Let's go out, he added, walking calmly beside her. She opened her bag slightly. I didn't bring much, she said, revealing drinks and simple snacks. There were more officers than I expected. Expensive things can cause legal issues, so I avoided that. He hesitated, but she insisted. Please, accept it. Thank you once again for yesterday, she repeated sincerely. She looked at him silently, recalling everything that had happened the night she lost control. He spoke firmly but gently. You should only drink enough to maintain your balance, he advised her. Flustered, she replied, I usually don't drink like this, but I messed up the exam. He stayed calm and repeated, Please be careful next time, his voice steady but a little concerned. She lowered her voice. Yes, but still, it's a bit strange, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. She recounted carefully. After I was stabbed with the awl, I woke up without any scars. Shin Jesus' eyes widened. Something wasn't right. That's impossible. Unless time itself was somehow altered again. She smiled warmly, masking the lingering confusion. "It's fine. This isn't your fault," she said gently. Jesus smiled back, nodding once. It's fine. This is my job after all," he replied honestly. A moment of silence hung between them. Neither moved. The air grew still around their quiet pause. Breaking the silence, he said, "I'm working at the moment. Let's leave it there. I'm going inside." She waved with energy. "Yes, good luck," she called cheerfully as he turned back toward the station. Jesus raised his fist with confidence. "Let's go," he said, energized as he returned to work. She smiled quietly behind him. Her expression softer now, but something in her mind still didn't rest. Suddenly, a vivid image struck her. An attacker with red hair, yelling wildly, filled her thoughts again. Her eyes narrowed. That face, she remembered it clearly. But why didn't anyone else believe it happened? Jesus' voice echoed in her mind. If the memories of previous events overlap. She kept walking forward. 2 officers patrolled the quiet streets when a sudden dispatch message crackled through their radio alert. Hun squinted at the report. Students suspected of drinking, smoking, disturbing peace. Typical call, she thought. They responded fast. Sirens wailed as the car sliced through the night, heading toward the school dormitory. Loud laughter echoed from the rooftop. Inside, teenagers mocked a classmate with cruel, drunken arrogance. Unaware of justice approaching, they laughed louder until flashing lights painted the windows, and footsteps stormed the stairs. The officers arrived quietly and observed the teens laughing, surrounded by bottles and trash on the bench. Jesus muttered, "They're having a drinking party!" and stepped forward with a calm but serious expression. The students noticed and murmured nervously. One muttered, "It's the cops," as silence spread among them. Officer Jesus asked directly, "Where did you buy the alcohol and cigarettes?" and waited for answers. One girl smiled slyly and called out, "Mister?" Trying to deflect attention with fake innocence, one of the girls lashed out, cursing harshly, her rage boiling over in the tense room. Suddenly, her tone shifted. A nervous laugh escaped as she admitted they were wrong all along. They tried to act innocent, pleading to clean up everything and be allowed to go quietly. Their excuse was weak. They claimed study stress made them act out, hands nervously clasped in defense. One officer whispered, thinking it harmless mischief, suggesting they clean up and be sent home immediately. Officer Jesus knelt down, expression stern, ready to confront the suspect sitting arrogantly on the bench. She leaned back provocatively, mocking him with a smirk, asking where exactly his eyes were looking at. Without hesitation, he commanded her to move, maintaining composure despite her clearly manipulative body language and tone. Suddenly, she erupted theatrically, screaming accusations, twisting his words to paint him as a dangerous pervert instantly. She screamed louder, accusing him of filming her, even slapping him violently to escalate the public scene. Bruised and trembling, the girl lay silently on the ground, her uniform torn and legs bloodied. Officer Jesus spotted her and calmly called out, asking her to step forward without fear or hesitation. As she slowly rose, her injured fingers clenched the ground, showing her pain and unwilling determination. She stepped into view, clothes dirty and legs scraped, her face blank as she tried to comply. Nearby, 2 delinquents laughed mockingly, pointing at her suffering and finding entertainment in her visible distress. The officer stepped forward, gently addressing the girl, his voice steady as he tried to understand. She kept her head down, tears forming, lips trembling, unable to look directly at anyone around her. Mocking laughter echoed again. The delinquents ridiculed her, claiming she was overreacting about dropping spare change. Another officer spoke firmly, declaring they'd escalate the case, emphasizing punishment since the offenders weren't minors. Before they could finish, the girl interrupted loudly, insisting she fell downstairs, desperate to protect herself. The group laughed cruelly, mocking her fake excuse, loudly repeating it to humiliate her further in public. Officer Shin sighed heavily, watching the injustice unfold, frustration building as his hands remained tied by protocol. He knew the truth. But without a victim's testimony, there was legally nothing he could pursue. The system demanded statements no matter what he saw. Without her words, everything remained outside his reach. As night deepened, he quietly walked beside the girl, unsure if justice would ever reach her. He looked at the apartment complex, disturbed that such cruelty happened right outside her own home. Walking behind her, he couldn't shake the thought that Yuri no longer felt safe where she lived. He called her name softly, hoping she'd hear sincerity instead of authority in his quiet voice. He handed her a note, telling her to call if she ever found courage to speak. Yuri looked up, his words settling in. Change required more than silence. It needed a will to act. Yuri clutched the note tightly, a small determined smile forming as she stepped out into the night. She ran toward something, maybe change, while an officer stood behind, unaware of what decision she had made. A few days later, the streets buzzed as life continued. Unaware of what had quietly shifted recently, a drunk man shouted orders in front of a store, mistaking it for a full-service restaurant. Frustrated, he threw money around, yelling at staff, demanding service no one offered in the snack shop. Officer Jesus calmly approached the drunken man, introduced himself, and requested payment for the items destroyed. The drunk man shouted back, confused and hostile, demanding to know Jesus' authority over his food order. Jesus grabbed him firmly and dragged him outside, ignoring the man's claims of social status or relatives. While restraining the man, Jesus casually called for backup, announcing his name and rank into the phone. As chaos unfolded, employees begged for explanation, stunned by the sudden fight breaking out in their store. Jesus held the drunken man firmly, ensuring he couldn't resist while leading him out of the store. Outside, he calmly walked the man down the street, determined to complete the arrest without disruption. Suddenly, Jesus' phone rang. He checked it mid-walk, curious if it was a follow-up or emergency. He paused, no one answered. A voice recording followed, leaving him with an odd sense of unease. Another officer asked if something was wrong. Jesus replied calmly, hiding his concern, and they returned together. Jesus listened closely to the radio, his expression hardening the moment the report came through. The call was serious. Someone had reported a suicide. Both officers responded immediately without wasting a second. Nearby men gossiped indifferently, making careless remarks, more concerned about real estate than someone's potential death. One muttered in disgust, annoyed by the situation, blaming youngsters without knowing the context or truth. Jesus informed dispatch he was stopping briefly, unwilling to ignore the situation or those heartless comments. Jesus answered his radio calmly, unaware that a critical clue had just been left on the ground. A red hair clip lay near the pavement. Its presence triggered urgency in Jesus' alert instincts. Instantly, his partner called out, panicked, as Jesus suddenly realized something was terribly wrong with the timing. Jesus' eyes widened. Yuri had tried to call him before the report came in, before anyone else knew. His partner confirmed the report was logged at 21:03, but Yuri's call came at 21:37. Jesus clenched his fist tightly, veins visible, consumed by helplessness and the weight of Yuri's call. He lowered his head in silence, desperately hoping it wasn't too late to reach her in time. Jesus' eyes burned with intensity as he watched the disruptive man yell and wave cash around. The drunk shouted for Macchioli, throwing bills on the floor, demanding service that didn't exist there. Officers stepped forward, asking the man to stop, but he ignored them and kept shouting angrily. The man pointed at Jesus, confused, asking if he was the cook, still demanding his drink. Jesus calmly introduced himself as Officer Shin Jesus, then quickly dropped the man with a single blow. As the drunk man cried for help, Jesus answered a sudden call that changed everything. Immediately the man collapsed, vomiting beside them. But Jesus' focus had already shifted elsewhere, his eyes sharp. He heard Yuri's voice faintly on the line and responded quickly, instructing her not to move. Without hesitation, Jesus declared he was heading out, leaving the situation behind as urgency filled the air. Their patrol car sped into the night as his partner asked about food, breaking the tense silence. Jesus gripped the wheel tightly, speeding through traffic, determined not to lose contact with Yuri again. He asked softly if she had anything she wanted to eat, trying to keep her engaged. He encouraged her to speak, assuring her he could help if she shared what was wrong. Yuri stammered, pretending she pressed the wrong button, then abruptly ended the call in panic again. Jesus shouted her name, desperate, as the patrol car raced faster under flashing lights through the city. Jesus stood impatiently as the elevator light blinked, wasting time he couldn't afford to lose. Without hesitation, he turned and sprinted toward the stairwell, choosing speed over convenience in this emergency. His breath grew heavier with every floor climbed, determination pushing his tired legs to keep moving. He pressed on despite exhaustion, fully focused on reaching Yuri before anything worse could happen. Driven by urgency, Jesus pushed upward, muttering that he was almost there, just a little more to go. Jesus slammed his fists against the wall, frustration and urgency mixing into one overwhelming surge of emotion. He dialed Yuri's number again, desperately pleading under his breath for her to pick up this time. The line rang, endless and silent, every second increasing the dread crawling through his chest. Gripping his phone tightly, he bolted forward again, heart pounding, refusing to let panic slow him down. He screamed Yuri's name into the night sky, voice cracking as he neared the building's rooftop. Jesus arrived at the rooftop, scanning every corner urgently, desperate to find any sign of Yuri. His eyes swept the city below, the silence too loud, time ticking against hope with every second. He muttered her full name, frustrated and afraid, unsure how much time he had left to act. A sound echoed an elevator ding. Floor 14. The doors opened slowly under flickering hallway lights. Inside, crouched alone and shaking, Yuri appeared silent and broken but alive, just as Jesus had hoped. Jesus exhaled deeply, exhaustion catching up after everything he endured just to reach Yuri in time. Yuri looked up cautiously, her voice trembling as she called out to him for reassurance. Jesus knelt down, gently praising her bravery for calling and staying alive through the fear. Later, inside her home, the ticking clock filled the silence as he prepared to question her. She explained quietly that her father came home late, around midnight, after finishing his shift at work. Jesus gently asked Yuri to recall the night's events, hoping to guide her through the trauma. He reminded her she had the courage to call for help, and that meant something powerful. Yuri hesitated, her voice unsure, admitting she didn't know what she felt or why she acted. She confessed her doubt, saying she hadn't trusted him, unsure if he could actually protect her. Yuri revealed she told her teacher everything before, but the school ignored it and did nothing. Yuri explained they warned her the police wouldn't help, and that reporting would only make things worse. She added they recorded her and threatened to release it, exposing her identity if she spoke out. Looking at him seriously, she asked one thing: could he still help her, despite all this? Hae-soo assured her not all police are powerless, reminding her how far he ran just to arrive. Yuri blinked, then asked curiously if he was a boomer, breaking the tension with a small joke. Yuri's hands trembled slightly on the table as she hesitated to ask the question burdening her heart. She looked up and asked quietly, "Mister, can you save me?" Her voice was soft but sincere. Hae-soo responded without pause, his voice steady, "Yes, definitely." His confidence offered her a moment of peace. Yuri lowered her head, her shoulders loosening, the fear slowly giving way to something unfamiliar, hope. As she glanced up again, Hae-soo reached forward calmly, his gesture solidifying the promise he had made. 1 year passed, fingers interlocked over a promise kept, a quiet symbol of trust that remained. Late at night, Hae-soo called his team leader, requesting to personally handle a delicate new case. The team leader, overwhelmed with work, questioned Hae-soo's persistence, surprised by his sudden sense of urgency. Hae-soo insisted the group assault case hadn't been reported yet, but it needed someone responsible immediately. With a reluctant sigh, the team leader agreed to listen, realizing Hae-soo wasn't letting this one go. A few days later, the sun rose over the school where everything quietly began to change. From the hallway, students grumbled, annoyed they had to come in during their precious lunch break. One laughed it off, suggesting they just mess around like they always did without consequences. Footsteps echoed through the corridor, tension growing with every step closer to the classroom door. Feigning innocence, the ringleader smiled and asked casually, "Teacher, why did you call us out here?" The bullies mocked Yuri again, taunting her in front of others like nothing had changed at all. One leaned forward, threatening her for not being hurt lately, challenging her silence with smug arrogance. The teacher suddenly stepped in, sharply questioning their behavior and reminding them who they were speaking to. She announced a police investigation was beginning. Yuri had reported them, and things were about to change. With calm authority, the teacher demanded they surrender fake phones immediately as panic hit their smug faces. Yuri sat silently, determined and composed, knowing this confrontation was inevitable after filing the report. One of the bullies exploded in rage, screaming insults, demanding to know why she reported them. Before Yuri could respond, she was slapped hard, the act fueled by panic and cornered frustration. The teacher jumped in, shouting at the aggressor, demanding she recognize the seriousness of her actions. Mocking laughter followed as another bully sneered, accusing the teacher of violence to twist the situation. Chaos erupted as a punch was thrown, students and adults caught in a storm of retaliation. The student yelled defensively, blaming the teacher for starting it, twisting the facts to shift blame quickly. Another adult stepped in, shocked, asking why a child had just been punched without resolving things peacefully. Feigning innocence, the aggressor insisted it was self-defense, while smirking with no trace of real fear. The teacher leaned close, whispering firmly for the student to bite down this time. They were fighting back. Yuri clenched her teeth and bit down, the pain and fear finally erupting into resistance. One thug screamed in shock, pulling back in pain as Hae-soo stepped forward. Finally entering the scene, the attacker turned angrily, asking who dared interfere, unaware of the officer now staring directly at him. Hae-soo's voice cut through, furious and calm, reminding him he just punched a teacher inside a school. Without hesitation, Hae-soo struck him down, ending the chaos with one swift and justified blow. The thug stumbled backward in pain as Hae-soo stepped closer, voice low, commanding him to bite down. Without hesitation, Hae-soo slammed him hard against the desk, delivering justice the coward never saw coming. The other bullies froze, terrified, recognizing Hae-soo, the officer who ruined their last escape, without lifting his voice. He smirked calmly, reminding them this was their first lesson in facing excessive force done legally. Shin Hae-soo grabbed the criminal's collar tightly, eyes fierce, demanding immediate answers without any hesitation. A panicked woman nearby shouted loudly, questioning his identity and urgently demanding someone call the police. Hae-soo declared his authority calmly, ordered Lim Sung-dong to secure the perpetrator's phones before anything was deleted. Lim Sung-dong quickly obeyed, collected the devices efficiently, ensuring no critical evidence could be erased. Hae-soo faced the woman directly, warned her firmly to comply immediately or face the consequences without exception. The woman shouted angrily, threatening to report the officers, but Lim Sung-dong grabbed her phone swiftly. With one firm motion, Lim Sung-dong forcefully snatched the phone, preventing any suspicious activity from happening. Hae-soo turned to the last suspect, ordering her to comply immediately before he escalated the situation further. The woman hesitated, questioned their authority aloud, wondering if police really had permission to act this aggressively. Lim Sung-dong inspected the collected devices, confused by the count 7 phones confiscated from only 5 suspects. Hae-soo confirmed everyone's presence. Yuri sat calmly, hiding something suspicious while keeping a confident smile. Suddenly, the angry woman lunged at Yuri, screaming loudly, revealing deeper conflicts hidden beneath their actions. Hae-soo reacted instantly, intercepting the attack before it escalated, restraining the enraged woman with firm control. The woman struggled violently, yelling for release, her emotions spiraling out of control despite the firm restraint. A voice echoed through the classroom, demanding clarity on the chaos. As footsteps approached the tense confrontation, the school principal arrived, standing firmly, questioning Hae-soo's authority and demanding an explanation for his presence. Yuri intervened arrogantly, challenging the principal. questioning whether the investigation had followed formal school procedures. Frustrated, Yuri stepped forward aggressively, accusing the principal of ignoring multiple prior complaints regarding student behavior. The principal shouted, addressing Miss Kim, worried about the school's reputation, suffering from such scandalous public exposure. The restrained girl cried dramatically, calling the principal grandma and falsely accusing the officer of twisting her wrist. Haesu turned sharply, his authority clear. The suspect stood frozen as tension filled the chaotic classroom air. Yuri confidently held up a memory card, silently agreeing to comply while maintaining her calculated expression. The principal panicked, demanding the evidence immediately, clearly aware of the trouble this exposure could bring. Haesu declared the Department of Education would investigate Songyun High, outlining the widespread corruption already uncovered. He warned the principal sternly, emphasizing compliance, explaining any interference would worsen charges and extend legal consequences. Haesu secured the final evidence envelope, confidently turning away as Sungdong watched carefully for further resistance. The criminals protested loudly, but Haesu dismissed them, calmly stating they'd meet again at the police station. Students gathered in the hall, whispering curiously, confused about why the police had suddenly appeared at school. The principal shouted, trying to control the growing crowd, his authority slipping amidst the unfolding public scandal. Yuri stood silently, her expression unreadable, while the situation grew even more complicated around her presence. Haesu warned calmly, explaining the criminals would likely shift full responsibility onto her to avoid severe punishment. Yuri remained composed, admitting her own shortcomings, but expressing quiet acceptance of everything that might happen. Another teacher approached gently, offering silent support, acknowledging Yuri's bravery for finally confronting the uncomfortable hidden truths. Together, they walked down the hallway, prepared to face any consequences awaiting them beyond this confrontation. The case concluded, 5 longtime bullies exposed. The corrupt principal's protection finally ended after years of silence. After submitting evidence to forensics, overwhelming proof of harassment and violence quickly surfaced from multiple hidden sources. Haesu warned Yuri about the inevitable rumors, asking if she was mentally prepared for the public exposure. Yuri stood firm, confidently agreeing to release everything, determined to end the cycle of injustice completely. Without hesitation, Haesu pressed the upload button, knowing the truth would finally reach everyone beyond these walls. The video spread rapidly online, shocking viewers. Comments poured in, condemning the bullies and demanding immediate justice. The scandal exploded online. Videos exposing the school's corruption spread rapidly, igniting national outrage and heated debates. Public pressure grew stronger. Major news outlets published countless articles, while online influencers amplified the students' suffering. Within days, a nationwide petition gained momentum. Thousands demanded justice, forcing government agencies to investigate immediately. Public sentiment turned harsh. People expressed their anger directly, demanding those responsible face strict legal consequences quickly. A few days later, the case progressed. At Maju Police Station, the arrested suspects awaited official interrogation. Haesu entered the station confidently, ready to conclude the case and deliver justice against the awaiting perpetrators. He smirked slightly, commenting sarcastically about how cheerful the suspects appeared despite their serious impending punishment. The detained bullies cursed quietly, growing increasingly irritated and anxious, realizing escape was now completely impossible. Haesu opened the door to the interrogation room, calmly ordering them to enter without further complaints or resistance. Outside, Yuri stood composed, ready to provide her final statement and face the outcome bravely. The bullies panicked, begging for forgiveness, desperately offering to settle things quietly before facing harsher punishments. They shifted the blame onto Kang Juri, claiming she coerced them and they were also victims themselves. One tried silencing the others, but their confessions continued, revealing every detail without control or coordination. With trembling hands, the final bully pleaded directly to Yuri, promising lifelong repentance if she showed mercy. Yuri remained silent, her expression calm but unreadable, carefully considering their pleas before making her final decision. One bully nervously confessed, admitting she never knew how to change but wanted forgiveness to start over. Yuri chuckled quietly, calling them pathetic, reflecting on everything she endured because of their past cruelty. With a calm expression, Yuri confidently declared she had healed and would never sign any settlement agreement. The bully's face twisted with frustration, realizing her last chance to escape punishment had just slipped away. Overwhelmed by rage, she shouted uncontrollably, no longer able to hide her true nature before everyone present. One bully snapped, lunging toward Yuri in anger, but security immediately intercepted and restrained her forcefully. Thrown to the floor, she realized her final outburst had only worsened the situation for everyone involved. Yuri stood quietly, unfazed, watching everything conclude, her expression calm as justice finally took its rightful course. The investigation concluded swiftly. Public pressure ensured all evidence was processed quickly, without delays or bureaucratic interference. All 5 perpetrators were sentenced to prison. Their long-standing crimes were finally punished under the nation's laws. Sung Young Hai was officially exposed. The corrupt principal and involved teachers were permanently expelled from education. Hae-soo quietly returned to his locker, reflecting briefly before moving forward, knowing justice had finally been served. He closed his locker, adjusting his collar, preparing to face a new chapter beyond the difficult investigation. Meeting again, Yuri's teacher noticed her new haircut. Yuri introduced her father warmly, smiling for the first time. Her father greeted Hae-soo kindly, expressing gratitude. Relieved his daughter could finally live peacefully without fear, Yuri's father introduced himself formally to Officer Hae-soo, offering his deepest gratitude through a firm handshake. With sincerity, he thanked Hae-soo repeatedly, overwhelmed by guilt for not protecting his daughter during difficult times. Admitting his fault, he confessed that constant work distractions caused him to neglect his only beloved daughter. Hae-soo reassured him gently, explaining that he could still make things right. The true blame belonged elsewhere. That night, the city lights flickered under a calm sky, signaling peaceful closure after long, painful struggles. Hae-soo prepared his notes carefully, reviewing his abilities, knowing the importance of managing every detail precisely. He confirmed the reset allowed exactly 6 minutes into the past, but only under highly dangerous crime conditions. The ability worked once daily and required a severe incident, either a fatality or permanent crippling injury. By focusing on the trigger word, Hae-soo could activate the reset, but only under strictly defined limitations. If a victim remained conscious during the reset, they would fully remember everything from before the reset. Hae-soo touched his forehead, determined to fully understand his mysterious power before using it again. He placed his hand firmly on the table, silently vowing to uncover every hidden secret behind it. Today felt heavier. The memories flooded back as the quiet school grounds echoed with distant, forgotten voices. It marked exactly 12 years since Hae-soo's father, his only remaining family member, tragically passed away. Hae-soo stared at the old photo, silently honoring the memory that continued fueling his relentless pursuit of justice. Returning from a brutal fight that day, Hae-soo never imagined it would be the last time seeing him. The elevator doors opened with a cold, metallic sound, signaling the start of a fateful, irreversible night. Hae-soo walked toward his apartment, drenched in sweat, unaware that everything was about to change forever. That was the day he encountered the mysterious man, face hidden behind a dark, unsettling black mask. Confused and alarmed, Hae-soo questioned the man's presence instinctively. Feeling immediate unease he couldn't logically explain, Hae-soo realized if he had hesitated for even a moment, something terrible would have definitely happened there. He entered the house despite lingering unease, forcing himself to dismiss the heavy, uncomfortable feeling clouding him. Hae-soo realized something was terribly wrong that day. But his warnings were dismissed without any real consideration. Authorities closed the investigation quickly, ruling it an accident. No foul play was officially acknowledged or recorded. Despite his silent protests, Hae-soo's pleas were ignored. His voice disappeared beneath layers of official indifference. Before the tragedy, his father happily suggested they go fishing together that weekend like old peaceful times. Smiling, Hae-soo agreed without hesitation, unaware it would be their final meal together before everything changed forever. Standing before his father's memorial, Hae-soo silently questioned the so-called truth recorded after that tragic day. His father wouldn't plan a fishing trip if he intended to end his own life that evening. Hae-soo became a police officer to uncover the truth, but all official records mysteriously lacked critical information. Even the CCTV footage from that day had vanished. Everything connected to the event had been erased. He couldn't forget that man's eyes, cold, merciless, filled with a monstrous desire that would never stop killing. Hae-soo looked at his hand, wondering if his miraculous ability could finally help achieve true justice. He believed with this power, he could eventually join the violent crimes unit and solve greater cases. That night, he visited a convenience store, lost in thought, the city lights glowing under the dark sky. Entering, Hae-soo greeted casually, but quickly noticed the shop seemed strangely quiet. Something felt slightly off. Glancing around, he sighed quietly, realizing it'd be another lonely night ending with just instant ramen again. Hae-soo rushed forward, noticing a collapsed man on the ground. Immediately assessing the situation without hesitation, he checked the man's pulse carefully, realizing both his heartbeat and breathing were dangerously faint and unstable. Despite no visible injuries, something was clearly wrong. Hae-soo quickly scanned the area for any additional clues. Pulling out his radio, Hae-soo urgently called for medical assistance, identifying himself and requesting immediate paramedic support. Desperation grew. Hae-soo knelt beside the man, pleading for him to stay awake and keep breathing. Hae-soo stood up suddenly, his mind racing, trying to understand the strange circumstances surrounding this unconscious man. A broadcast announced the winning lottery numbers. Hae-soo's eyes instinctively locked onto the television, realizing something unusual. Could it really be possible? Hae-soo turned toward the unconscious man, suspicion growing with each passing second. Reaching into the man's hand, Hae-soo found a lottery ticket matching all the announced winning numbers exactly. Hae-soo muttered under his breath, was this really just a sudden shock from unexpectedly winning the entire lottery? Hae-soo's heart pounded violently. Temptation clouded his judgment, and dangerous thoughts started creeping into his mind. The unconscious man's words echoed faintly he could repay his massive debts if he survived this ordeal. Hae-soo rationalized, The lottery ticket sat unnoticed in a CCTV blind spot. No one would ever know. He struggled internally, wondering if ignoring everything for just a moment could erase his own hardships. Tension gripped him. His conscience fought back, battling the overwhelming desire to escape his own miserable reality. Jesus gripped his head tightly, struggling to think clearly. He needed a solution before time ran out. Deciding to stay cautious, he prepared to call for help but also considered his last resort option. With the lottery numbers memorized, he steadied his breathing, ready to attempt activating his ability once again. He focused entirely, whispering the trigger word reset, hoping the time reversal would activate and fix everything immediately. Light flashed in his eyes. The reset worked perfectly. Jesus opened his eyes, determined to handle things properly. Jesus glanced at the clock, 7:52 p.m. Time was running out before the lottery deadline officially closed. He sprinted through the streets, torn between saving the unconscious man and securing the lottery ticket. His heart raced. He searched frantically, hoping to find the man before it was too late. Finally, Jesus spotted the convenience store. Relief surged through him, but there was no time to celebrate. Traffic chaos erupted. Cars screeched and swerved as Jesus dashed forward, determined to reach his destination safely. Jesus sprinted through the busy intersection, narrowly dodging cars as angry drivers shouted after him furiously. One man lunged at Jesus, trying to stop him, but Jesus broke free without losing his momentum. The man called after him, confused and frustrated, but Jesus had no time to explain his urgency. Jesus finally reached the store entrance, pushing through the doors with all his remaining strength and desperation. Panting heavily, Jesus gasped aloud, his eyes locked on the clock. "The lottery!" he shouted instinctively. Jesus rushed straight to the counter, startling the clerk who barely managed to react in time. Without hesitation, Jesus slammed the ticket onto the counter, declaring urgently, "I'll take this right now!" The startled clerk quickly processed it, joking nervously, "It's like you've traveled back from the future or something." Jesus laughed awkwardly but knew there was no time to explain anything. He clenched the ticket tightly. Shouting an apology, he sprinted out of the store, heart pounding, finally securing the ticket before the deadline. Jesus faced the angry drivers, quickly explaining he'd settle everything later and asked for their understanding. He tossed his business card, shouting urgently, "I'm busy now! Please handle insurance and contact me later!" Confused and frustrated, the drivers yelled after him, calling him crazy as Jesus sprinted away determinedly. Still running, Jesus apologized again, shouting back, "Please, don't forget to contact me," before disappearing down the street. Watching him leave, one driver asked in disbelief, "Wait, was that guy really a cop?" Jesus checked the broadcast anxiously. His heart pounded, knowing this exact moment determined everything he'd planned. The final winning number appeared, 47. Relief flooded through him. He had successfully timed everything just right. Suddenly, the collapsed man groaned painfully. Jesus' relief turned to urgency as the man struggled to breathe. Without hesitation, Jesus sprinted toward him, calling out, "Ah, Juicy!" as the man's condition worsened before his eyes. Jesus reached him just in time, grabbing his shoulders to stabilize him and assess the critical situation. Jesus performed chest compressions, shouting urgently for help. Paramedics arrived just as the man went into cardiac arrest. The ambulance rushed away. Jesus stood there, exhausted but relieved, knowing he'd done everything possible to help. Days later, under a bright sky, the man returned, alive and healthy, grateful for his second chance. He bowed deeply, thanking Jesus sincerely. "I heard you saved me. Truly, thank you for everything." Jesus smiled warmly, responding humbly, "No, I'm more grateful that you're alive and well. That's what really matters." The old man smiled warmly and confessed, "Actually, I won first place in the lottery that day." He chuckled softly, recalling how his weak heart simply couldn't handle the overwhelming shock and excitement. With a bittersweet smile, he admitted, "The money felt like it was trying to swallow my entire life." Calmly, he explained he had no wife or children. "That money's meaningless to me if I'm gone." He extended the winning ticket toward Jesus. "Here, you can take it," he said sincerely without hesitation. The next day, under a clear sky, Jesus confidently walked toward the headquarters of Daehan Bank. Inside, the bank was crowded, but Jesus sat patiently, waiting for his number to be called. When his turn came, Jesus stood up calmly, his mind focused and expression steady, with quiet determination. The queue number displayed 094. Jesus inhaled deeply, knowing this moment would officially change his entire life. At the counter, a friendly bank clerk greeted him with a smile. "How can I assist you?" Jesus stepped forward confidently. Presenting his documents and winning ticket with a composed yet proud expression, the bank clerk smiled brightly and congratulated him. "Ah, yes! Congratulations, sir! May I see your ID?" Jesus calmly handed over not one, but 5 number 1 priority cards, surprising everyone nearby with his status. The clerk's thoughts raced. "No way! He has 5 number 1 priority cards? Who is this man?" Flustered, the clerk tried to remain professional. "Congratulations again," she stammered, quickly processing the paperwork. Jesus noticed a manager approaching respectfully. This wasn't an ordinary transaction, it required special handling and attention. The manager welcomed him with a professional smile. "Please follow me. I'll guide you through everything personally." Claiming the prize wasn't simple. The process involved exclusive VIP accounts for deposits exceeding 10 billion won. The manager explained the funds wouldn't be transferred immediately. Special financial consultations were mandatory before release. Hae-soo learned he'd need extensive evaluations from senior financial planners to manage such a massive amount properly. Hae-soo confirmed his address carefully, ensuring there would be no mistakes in the final delivery arrangements. The manager smiled. Perfect. The VIP gift worth 1 million won will be delivered within a few days. Finishing the process, Ha-soo politely excused himself, smiling faintly as the manager commented, "You're incredibly lucky." Outside, Hae-soo reflected quietly. Despite everything, he still managed to keep more than half the prize. He smiled, thinking, normally, there'd be around 15 winners. I really did have an unbelievable dream, didn't I? Shin Hae-soo stared at his phone, disbelief flooding him. His account balance showed exactly 1 billion won. Calculating quickly, he realized this money could erase years of debt and completely settle every remaining obligation. A confident smile crossed his face. With financial burdens gone, he could finally confront the city's criminals. Hae-soo approached the gang without hesitation. His clenched fist struck first, shocking everyone with his overwhelming strength. Under the darkening sky, screams echoed. Tonight, fear of fists would replace their disregard for the law. Detective Hae-soo entered confidently. His colleague noticed his cheerful mood and curiously asked if something good happened. Smiling proudly, Hae-soo announced he'd finally cleared every single debt, freeing himself from years of financial struggle. Surprised, his colleague admitted apartment loans would trap him for decades, barely managing his own monthly payments. Walking outside, Hae-soo explained he'd sold his damaged car using settlement money, avoiding further unnecessary repair expenses. His colleague looked confused, questioning why minor accident led to scrapping. Hae-soo casually shrugged, unconcerned about material things. Hae-soo waved goodbye, promising to meet tomorrow. His colleague reminded him politely to walk home carefully tonight. Crossing quiet neighborhoods, Hae-soo admired peaceful streets, relieved no trouble appeared after a long, exhausting workday. Carrying groceries tightly, Hae-soo smiled faintly. Money made simple pleasures like buying food feel incredibly satisfying again. With renewed energy, Hae-soo planned his dinner. Tonight, no restrictions, he would eat until his stomach completely surrendered. As he reached for his apartment door, a sudden chill ran through him. Something felt unusually wrong. Hae-soo immediately sensed danger. His expression hardened, instincts warning him something was terribly wrong inside his apartment. Holding his breath, Hae-soo listened carefully. Faint movements echoed from the dark corners, confirming his growing suspicions immediately. A sudden noise broke the silence. Hae-soo turned sharply, eyes narrowing as adrenaline surged through his body. Stepping firmly into the room, Hae-soo's sharp gaze landed on unknown figures lurking silently in his kitchen. Without hesitation, he demanded answers, his voice calm but firm. "Who are you guys, and why here?" Masked intruders stepped forward confidently. Their leader threatened Ha-soo, warning him to cooperate or face death. Calmly, Ha-soo raised his grocery bag. He explained hunger overwhelmed him, requesting permission to eat first. The intruders exchanged confused glances. Their leader mocked Hae-soo, threatening to twist him like a chicken's neck. Ignoring the threat, Hae-soo clenched his fist. He confirmed again, "Chicken, you said?" His expression remained unreadable. With an intimidating grip, Hae-soo cracked his knuckles. Calmly, he asked, "Are you seasoned or original flavor?" Hae-soo took slow steps forward, casually asking if they preferred soy sauce flavor instead of seasoned chicken. Frustrated, one masked intruder lunged forward aggressively, shouting profanity as he aimed directly for Hae-soo's head. With a quick sidestep, Hae-soo easily dodged. His movement fluid, precise, completely avoiding the reckless incoming attack. Hae-soo countered instantly, landing a powerful strike. The sound of impact echoed, sending the attacker crashing backward. Eyes wide with panic, the remaining intruder froze. Realization dawned this fight wasn't ending as they expected. Hae-soo struck hard, his fists connecting perfectly. "This feels exactly right," he muttered, watching the man collapse. Standing tall, Hae-soo surveyed the remaining intruders. Calmly, he asked with authority, "Who's next to try?" One bald man growled angrily, charging forward. His veins bulged, fists clenched tight, screaming obscenities at Hae-soo fearlessly. Hae-soo sidestepped smoothly, countering with devastating force. His punch landed directly, sending the bald man crashing backward immediately. The attacker couldn't react fast enough. Pain erupted through his face as Ha-soo's blow knocked him unconscious. The last intruder hesitated briefly, panic flashing across his face before charging forward with a loud scream. Fueled by desperation, the attacker sprinted directly toward Hae-soo, shouting curses and swinging wildly without any precision. With perfect timing, Hae-soo ducked low, easily evading the reckless punch before preparing his swift counterattack. Before the attacker could react, Hae-soo delivered a powerful uppercut, sending the man staggering backward in shock. Smirking, Hae-soo wiped his knuckles clean. "What? So you're not a chicken after all?" he teased confidently. Shin Hae-soo stormed down the hallway. Bloodstains lined the walls, his heart burned, seeking justice. Two gang members froze. Trembling, one raised his hands. That was a mistake!" he stammered nervously. Without hesitation, Hae-soo's fist connected brutally with the thug's face. Bones cracked. Blood sprayed across the cold floor. The second thug lunged forward, desperate. Jesus turned swiftly, countering with a devastating elbow strike, shattering his ribs. Both criminals collapsed, bloodied and broken. Jesus stood tall, his eyes searching for the mastermind behind everything. From behind the door, Jesus' sharp eyes scanned the room. His next target stood unaware nearby. Two well-dressed men exchanged nervous glances. One whispered, "Is it already over?" Doubt filled their expressions. Jesus appeared confidently. His voice cut through silence. "You've got more friends waiting for me, right?" One thug's eyes widened, spotting the unconscious body nearby. Panic surged, realizing they were next in line. Charging forward, the thug cursed loudly. Jesus reacted instantly, fists clenched, ready to end it decisively. A thug dragged his unconscious friend, panicked. "Wait!" he shouted, spotting Jesus approaching fast behind. Before the thug escaped, Jesus slammed the door violently. The sound echoed, locking their fate inside.
Jesus rolled up to a quiet street, wondering why the place looked so expensive. His thoughts were racing. 10 billion in a dumpy building? Something fishy was going on here. He rubbed his hands together, feeling the nerves build as the door remained shut too long. Still no sign of anyone. Jesus started pacing, eyes darting toward the front window. Then someone unexpected stepped out, cool and composed, like he knew exactly who Jesus was. Jesus raised a hand cautiously, but the guy rushed forward like a charging bull. No hesitation, Jesus sidestepped, glass shattering as a wild punch missed him by inches. The guy yelled, demanding answers, fists swinging like he'd been waiting for a fight. Jesus ducked under a punch, grabbed his coat, and flipped him hard to the sidewalk. A final slam knocked the wind out of him before he could say another word. With a bloody nose and bruised pride, the man groaned, finally too dazed to move. Jesus dragged him inside, tossing him down like a sack of laundry on the floor. He stared the guy down, eyes narrowed, piecing together what just happened outside. Around the room, more guys froze mid-snack, caught off guard by Jesus' sudden entrance. One of them raised his hand, shaky voice answering before anyone else could speak up. One of the guys panicked, scrambling up, but it was already too late to run. Jesus pulled out a necklace, calm as ever, letting silence press heavy in the room. Everyone dropped flat on the floor, hands out, scared straight by Jesus' cold stare. He walked slowly through them, waiting for someone to talk, tension thick like summer heat. Eyes locked on the leader, Jesus leaned in, forcing answers with quiet pressure and presence. The guy started talking fast, desperation in his voice, explaining every shady move they made. 3 billion won, exactly what Jesus expected. The numbers lined up a little too perfectly. This wasn't coincidence. They targeted winners with precision, hitting just below the legal complaint threshold. Every detail was calculated. They worked it out like professionals who'd done this many times before. They'd even stolen 500 million once, confident no victim would dare report the crime. Since that score, they grew bolder, adding threats and violence to keep victims completely silent. Jesus already saw the pattern. Someone inside leaked info, giving them names before the winners even celebrated. The puzzle clicked together fast, and Jesus knew exactly where the leak was coming from. Ju Youngpal's name fit perfectly, the one person who'd know every transaction before it happened. The money didn't stay long, moved quick through local accounts, then overseas to avoid tracing altogether. Jesus stayed calm, watching the truth unfold like a puzzle fitting perfectly into place. It was clear the blame would fall on him, while Youngpal vanished with all the money. Jesus already knew it. Youngpal never planned to share anything once things started falling apart. The thug cursed Youngpal loudly, rage boiling now that betrayal finally hit him in full. He still couldn't believe Jesus knew everything, down to each step before it even happened. Jesus didn't flinch, made it clear their future now depended on full cooperation, no shortcuts left. Reluctantly, the guy nodded. Jesus laid out the deal while keeping a close eye. Behind the scenes, Jesus had coordinated the plan, even getting the investigation team on board. With everything rolling, they tracked the suspicious accounts and phone numbers connected to the operation. 2 hours later, the trap was set, city lights glowing, time ticking toward the final catch. On a quiet road nearby, a car waited. Tension built as time dragged on. Inside, Youngpal relaxed, assuming everything had gone smoothly like every other job before. A phone buzzed beside him, routine check-in. Nothing unusual on the surface just yet. He mentioned a pickup, confident the last cut of 2 billion would be delivered soon. His greedy smirk returned. Once 5 billion was secured, the rest would vanish without a trace. Youngpal slammed the car door, furious at being ignored and left out of everything important. His ego cracked. He reminded everyone how this entire operation started and thrived because of him. Nobody seemed impressed. Plans were already moving forward without him even in the loop anymore. He paused, frustrated but willing to follow, hoping he'd still get his promised cut tomorrow. Grumbling, he agreed to transfer the money, sensing the tone had already shifted against him. Anger built up fast. He hated relying on people he didn't even fully trust. Yongpal muttered insults, calling them dumb muscle too reckless to pull anything off alone. He pounded the seat, tempted to ditch them, but knew cutting ties now was too risky. Too much had been shared. If he bailed, everything could blow up in his face. Best move now? Wait it out, grab the money, and disappear before anyone noticed anything wrong. Later that night, the meeting spot lit up quietly, cars pulling in one by one. Haesu arrived first, headlights off, watching each vehicle's approach with calm, calculated patience. 2 cars parked side by side. The air felt heavy, charged with tension and suspicion. Yongpal got in, eyes sharp. He grumbled about delays but knew time was running short. Haesu didn't respond, only nodded. Both men understood this needed to end cleanly and fast. Yongpal tossed over the bundle. Haesu calmly told him to count it and confirm everything. Each bill was checked one by one, Yongpal nodding when the total looked perfectly correct. With money confirmed, Yongpal finally relaxed, convinced the deal had gone just as planned tonight. He smirked, casually reaching down to grab the hidden device and move the funds. Before he could speak, a sudden shout cut through the air, stopping everything cold. A new figure stepped from the shadows, catching Yongpal completely off guard with his timing. Haesu stepped out of the car. His presence made everyone freeze, stunned and confused. Yongpal panicked, recognizing Haesu immediately. He knew something was very, very wrong now. Cuffs came out fast. Haesu announced the arrest like it was already written in stone, charges laid down clearly, his voice steady. There was no way out of this trap now. Haesu warned him not to say anything foolish. Everything was already locked in place. The full picture was exposed, every detail, every name, every one stolen by the crew. Their scams totaled billions, and all 16 victims had kept completely silent until now. Thanks to the sting operation, the $1 billion transfer allowed tracking every hidden account. The investigation team recovered every transaction, tracing them all back to the tightly sealed evidence lockers. Half the stolen money was recovered in cash, tightly packed and stacked like bricks. The rest came from liquidated assets under fake names, hidden across multiple dummy accounts. In the end, victims recovered nearly everything, finally seeing justice after all that silence. Curious whispers spread. How could a regular officer pull this off and fund the whole sting? People joked Haesu hit the lottery, but none could deny his insane detective instincts. Back at the station, Haesu acted like nothing happened, just typing up reports casually. A coworker teased him gently, clearly impressed but trying not to let it show. Haesu brushed it off, humble as ever, keeping his head low despite the praise. She gave him a playful smile, glad he wasn't turning into some arrogant hero. Leaning closer, she called his name, curiosity and warmth lingering between the shared silence. Ji-yoon leaned closer to Haesu, curiosity bubbling as she playfully nudged into his quiet space. The mood stayed light, but Ji-yoon's question made Haesu pause longer than he probably should have. Inside the busy office, Haesu realized he never seriously considered what he liked in someone. Ji-yoon smiled wide, holding up 3 fingers, clearly expecting real answers, not some clever dodge. Haesu stood still for a second, hand on chin, mind racing to find honest, simple answers. First thing that came to mind was ramen he liked when someone enjoyed simple things. Then came justice. He couldn't imagine caring for someone who turned a blind eye. Last one stung. Cheating wasn't just about romance. It was about loyalty and trust. Ji-yoon chuckled nervously, caught off guard, unsure whether to keep teasing or actually feel something shift. Haesu stayed quiet, lost in thought, wondering why her reaction mattered more than he expected. Morning rolled in, and Haesu looked unusually relaxed, like someone who'd made peace with something unspoken. His partner zoomed off on the bike, leaving behind a quick wave and trail of dust. Haesu stared at the building, trying to remember if the restroom was on the 3rd floor. The bike sliced through traffic, every motion smooth, clearly not his first day on duty. Haesu walked forward casually, thoughts drifting again to Ji-yoon, her laugh still fresh in memory. Haesu stepped inside, Bruhaesug dust from his sleeve, eyes scanning the spotless, glassy modern office. A suited man adjusted his tie twice, clearing his throat like a formality mattered here. Gu Seju greeted with a confident nod, papers already lined up like a sales pitch. Haesu gave a small nod, sitting down like someone who'd rather be anywhere else today. The polished nameplate read, Financial Planner Gu Seju. The guy seemed proud of that title. Seju leaned forward, launching into his script about names, jobs, and well-matched financial destinies. Haesu nodded politely, already overwhelmed by investment categories, types, and hypothetical future marital status adjustments. Charts stacked fast, Seju flipping them over with flair like he was shuffling high-stakes cards. Haesu rubbed his chin, attention drifting, none of these safe options feeling quite right today. Seju noticed the pause, ready with backup plans in bold fonts and a paper cup. For folks with zero savings, Seju warned, the fees could get real ugly real fast. Haesu reached for the water, but his thoughts weren't really focused on hydration or charts. Seju adjusted his glasses. curious if Heisu was chasing something outside the typical budget range. Calmly, Heisu dropped the number. His seed money was over 11 billion, no hesitation. Seiju blinked, lips parting mid-sentence, stunned by a figure that changed the entire room's mood instantly. Seiju stared blankly, stunned he'd never met a client with more than 2 billion. Heisu mentioned the team leader's recommendation, not seeing what the big deal was about. Seiju quickly adjusted his title, hoping to match the gravity of such a massive client. With documents in hand, he offered Heisu control over purchase options and stock management preferences. Heisu waved it off coolly, not needing approval forms. Full trust placed in Seiju's hands. Heisu's tone stayed calm, like handing over billions was just another errand before lunch break. Seiju fumbled his pen, overwhelmed, promising to give his life if anything went wrong. Heisu gave a rare smile, amused by how dramatic Seiju suddenly became. Just then, a buzzing phone reminded him he actually had somewhere to be today. Outside the salon, a woman received compliments. Her glow hinted something special was planned. One stylist whispered the guy might faint. She looked breathtaking in every detail today. Kim Eunbi smiled softly, clearly pleased with the effort she put into her appearance. Her eyes sparkled as she glanced at her reflection, satisfaction radiating through her confident stride. Even after arriving 10 minutes late, she expected someone to be waiting patiently outside. Her smile dimmed slightly. He still hadn't shown. And that definitely wasn't part of plan. Eunmi waited impatiently, tapping her phone, wondering how long she'd stand there, looking annoyed. She looked up again, still no sign of him, trying not to seem too irritated. A voice finally called her name, snapping her out of her mildly angry thoughts. She turned with a surprised look, trying to hide her irritation and act casually calm. Heisu offered the helmet like nothing happened, not bothered by her obvious frustration or glare. Eunmi hesitated near the bike, suddenly aware that her skirt wasn't made for motorcycles. Heisu reached into a bag and casually held out a pair of training pants. The pants were dropped onto her lap like it was the most normal thing ever. She stared at them, confused and slightly embarrassed by the unexpected yet practical gesture. Still unsure, she glanced down at her legs, silently weighing convenience over self-consciousness again. Heisu stood casually, waiting, while she awkwardly tried to figure out how to climb up. She gave up pretending to be graceful and got on the motorcycle in one motion. His eyes lingered slightly, and she definitely noticed, but said nothing and kept cool. He tilted his head curiously, sensing the tension but not entirely sure what he caused. Heisu pointed out her unsteady posture, half concerned, half annoyed by the lack of basic balance. Eunmi nearly lost balance, startled by the sudden motion and Heisu's lack of warning. She sat still, tense and quiet, regretting every decision that led her to this point. He casually handed her the helmet, like her silence wasn't completely screaming frustration. Carefully adjusting the helmet, she realized it was too tight thanks to her perfect hairstyle. She winced, silently blaming every salon visit that morning for ruining this simple ride. The bike shot forward, tires screeching, and Eunmi let out an involuntary scream of terror. Buildings blurred past as she gripped tighter, rethinking how her day spiraled this far. Red brake lights flashed ahead, but he didn't slow down, making her clutch his jacket. Her whole body tensed. "I want to kill him," played like a chant inside. They finally stopped, Eunmi's heart pounding louder than the engine still humming between her knees. Heisu announced their arrival as if they hadn't just dodged every traffic rule imaginable. Eunmi yanked off the helmet, hair ruined, frustration boiling right to the surface. She shouted, furious, still dizzy. She clearly expected a calm car ride, not whatever this was. He shrugged casually, explaining the car incident like it wasn't the least bit inconvenient. She glared daggers, red with rage, while he smiled, somehow completely unbothered by the chaos. Eunmi suddenly smiled brightly, acting like nothing happened, pretending the helmet meltdown never existed. The meat sizzled on the grill while Eunmi quietly observed everything with growing curiosity. Delicious smells filled the air, making her stomach growl louder than she wanted to admit. The first bite was perfect, smoky, tender, just what she needed after a long day. She smiled to herself, thinking maybe this dinner wasn't such a bad idea after all. Something about his calm energy made the food taste even better. Maybe too much better. Her eyes scanned his face, unexpectedly finding comfort in features sharper than she usually liked. Noticed his build, next tall, solid, confident, definitely not your average quiet office guy. She blinked, catching herself staring, trying not to let her thoughts drift somewhere inappropriate again. Her friend's grin said everything this setup clearly wasn't as random as she pretended. Eunmi straightened up slightly, aware now that she'd become just a little too interested already. He kept eating steadily, his calm presence somehow louder than words in the quiet booth. She wondered if he was bored, but his silence felt more thoughtful than dismissive. When she mentioned her job, his expression barely changed, unreadable, like he'd heard it before. The lack of reaction puzzled her, but she tried not to show any confusion outwardly. He finally spoke not about her but his job, salary cut, excessive force case. Yunim tried to laugh off the awkward moment, but the tension was painfully obvious now. She awkwardly suggested a loan, expecting he'd brag instead. He just smiled and nodded. Clearing debts sounded responsible, but a one-bedroom rental wasn't what she'd pictured for his job. Her fake laugh filled the space, louder than needed, trying to break the silence. He blinked at her sudden mood shift, clearly unsure what was so funny or not. He stood to leave for the restroom, giving her a polite nod on the way. Alone now, she processed everything: salary, debt, rental. It was all kind of deflating. Her thoughts turned judgmental fast: low income, no home, no future. What was she thinking? She waved the server over, deciding it was easier to just end the date now. But before she could pay, she learned he'd already quietly taken care of the bill. She hesitated, suddenly unsure. Maybe he deserved more credit than she'd been giving him. A small shift in her expression, maybe he'd earned one more chance after all. But just then, yelling exploded from behind, fists slammed, furniture shook, voices rising. A customer was raging, slamming the table, veins bulging as tension filled the restaurant air. Staff pleaded for calm, warning him, but the man was already too far gone. The shouting escalated fast. The man snapped, lunging with a wild, furious punch. Another hit followed, and chaos broke loose as the poor waiter hit the floor hard. Yunim glanced at Jesus, unsure whether to step away or call someone. Jesus didn't move yet, just quietly watched as the aggressor kept going. The man barked more threats, fists clenched, dragging the poor waiter up again violently. Without a word, Jesus stepped in, his presence alone enough to interrupt the madness. The aggressor turned mid-rant, veins popping, still too blinded by anger to recognize who approached. But the second he realized who it was, his entire posture instantly collapsed. The anger turned to panic as Jesus raised a hand not to hit. He lowered his voice and gaze, stuttering, instantly submissive under Jesus' calm stare. Jesus grabbed his shoulder firmly but without aggression, calmly leading him away from the scene. A sudden movement caught his eye. Another man darted toward the exit. Jesus raised a brow, recognizing the runner with a slight smirk of surprise. The same guys from the day before back again, this time bowing in fear. Behind them, Yunim watched it unfold, suddenly seeing Jesus in an entirely different light. One man begged on his knees, trembling, insisting they wouldn't move until forgiven. Jesus stayed calm but stern, giving one last warning before things escalated any further. His voice dropped just 2 words, quiet but serious enough to make them all flinch. The group stood up fast, stiff and awkward, not daring to make eye contact. With arms crossed, Jesus calmly asked where they were from, eyes locked like a hawk. They stuttered, Gaesong building, while avoiding his eyes, nervous like schoolboys caught skipping class. He raised an eyebrow. That place again. Everything was starting to line up now. Still bowing, they offered apologies, but Jesus didn't seem impressed in the slightest. He told the waiter they could press charges. 3 versus 1 wasn't anything minor, but instead, the waiter simply asked them to clean the place before they left. Without hesitation, the men scrambled to clean, wiping tables faster than professional janitors. Yunim watched with disbelief, barely hiding the surprise on her face. Jesus turned toward her, and for the first time, she looked at him differently. The thugs bowed and thanked him, leaving quickly like they'd escaped a lion's den. Yunim blinked, stunned. This felt unreal, like a drama scene, not actual real life. Jesus explained those guys were thugs from before, already familiar with who he was. Yunim nodded, finally understanding why they bowed like puppies in front of a lion. Night settled over the city, quieting everything down as they stepped into the elevator. After all that chaos, the silence felt kind of peaceful in a weird, good way. She smiled, Brew Jesus' hair behind her ear, thinking the night had actually been fun. Jesus replied casually, not catching her tone. Yunim blinked, unsure what he even meant. The moment lingered awkwardly, and she wondered if he truly didn't realize her hint. Still hopeful, she paused, waiting for something more, but it never came from him. She tried again, softly hinting they could meet again, a little clearer this time. But his answer came sharp and unexpected, slicing right through her unspoken expectations. "Not my type," echoed in her mind as she froze, completely stunned by the bluntness. Her frustration boiled over. She snapped, throwing out petty jabs like a reflex defense. He barely reacted, just stood there, cool as ever, while she stormed toward the road. The cab door slammed, leaving her fuming, cheeks hot, pride wounded beyond quick repair. Inside the taxi, she grumbled non-stop, but Jesus still stood there smiling like nothing happened. Morning light crept through the curtains as Jesus' phone buzzed, breaking the rare silence. Still half asleep, he answered groggily, hoping it wasn't another patrol or annoying paperwork issue. Hearing urgent matter, he sat up instantly, instincts kicking in before his eyes fully opened. The phone rang just as morning light warmed the edge of Officer Jesus' messy apartment. Half asleep, he rubbed his eyes, exhausted from another night shift filled with noise and chaos. He sat up, hair a mess, heartbeat rising fast as he caught the word urgent. The situation involved a valuable building downtown, facing bankruptcy if not sold immediately for cash. Hearing the price tag, Jesus' brain froze, and his morning hunger vanished in a blink. Executive Gu spoke confidently, outlining numbers that made Jesus feel like a broke high school student again. The offer sounded solid, rare, profitable, and way beyond anything Jesus had ever imagined owning personally. He nodded coolly, heart pounding, trying not to let excitement spill through his calm exterior. Outside, the towering building shimmered. Jesus looked up, stunned. Was this dream really within reach now? Still in uniform, he returned to duty, hiding ambition beneath quiet steps through the station lobby. At the precinct, murmurs swirled around like wind. One name kept surfacing, Eunmi, the heartbreaker. They said she turned him down. But Jesus didn't flinch. He'd already processed that bitter moment. The rejection wasn't loud, just quietly painful, like a glass gently slipping from tired fingers. Eunmi, perfect on paper, simply never made his heart feel real, just admired from a distance. That night ended not with words, but empty bottles clinking softly under flickering bar lights. The woman leaned in, her voice like velvet, clearly impressed by Jesus' effortless takedown. Her confidence spilled through every word, admiration lighting her eyes with curious fascination. Jesus barely flinched. He'd heard it before, though her charm still made him blink twice. In contrast, his colleague watched silently, her words slow-guarded, careful, more reserved than expected. She doubted Eunmi's story. Something about it felt off, like missing puzzle pieces jammed together. The day broke open with sirens and sun. Life in the city moved relentlessly forward. Jesus cruised through intersections, mind wandering to buildings, off-duty days, and maybe a better future. His destination neared a glass tower he might someday call his own, if things aligned. But something caught his eye, a familiar face standing ahead, oddly out of place. Helmet off, he squinted hard. That was Executive Gu, just standing in the middle. Gu glanced around, clearly waiting, though something in his expression hinted he wasn't entirely calm. The light turned green. He hesitated, then decided to cross anyway without waiting for Jesus. Hands in pockets, he moved casually, unaware of the approaching danger speeding down the road. One step forward, and tires screamed metal and chaos slicing through what was just routine seconds ago. Jesus' heart dropped. Everything around him blurred, instincts firing faster than the city's blaring horns. Without hesitation, Jesus sprinted, instincts firing. This wasn't training, this was life tearing through seconds. Eyes wide, his helmet hid fear as danger barreled closer like a bullet without mercy. His arm lunged out, everything else fading, only the impact and saving Gu truly mattered. Flesh met steel and pain exploded. Time slowed, but Jesus' grip never faltered. A single shoe skidded across pavement. Silence followed the crash like smoke after fireworks. Skid marks scarred the road, drawing a line between life, death, and narrow survival. People screamed, panic spread. Gu's name echoed across the scene as Jesus collapsed hard. His name was shouted again, louder this time, full of shock and disbelief from every direction. Gu lay bloody, eyes half closed, clinging to life with a shaky breath. Jesus leaned close, trembling, the pain in his voice heavier than the blood-soaked street below. Gu smiled faintly through bruises, his words soft but carved with weight Jesus couldn't ignore. Fury burned behind Jesus' tired eyes. This couldn't end here, not like this. Not today. He whispered one word, the one that defied time, pain, and fate itself. Light snapped back around him, pulling him out of blood and into a second chance. In the blink of an eye, he was back, suit gone. Uniform on, heart racing. Jesus made a quick call, already thinking through the 100 ways this could go wrong. He'd find a place to hide Gu, somewhere quiet, away from obvious threats. No signal. He cursed under his breath. This moment wasn't going to wait for tech. 28 minutes left. His window was tight. Timing had to be exact or risk everything. He hit the road fast, wheels slicing air, mind locked on every second ticking down. He scanned the street, looking for anything familiar, hoping his memory still aligned with reality. The road was unchanged, but tension wrapped his chest like wires pulled tighter with doubt. From this distance, he could track the car if he acted quickly and aimed right. One more call. It could help. Maybe just enough to stay ahead this time. No answer again. He laughed dryly. Some finance guy. Couldn't answer calls in life or death. Across the street, a hooded woman moved deliberately, phone pressed tightly to her cheek. The signal changed. She noticed, hesitated slightly, and began to step forward toward the road. Something about her felt off, like her path wasn't random but chosen, intentional and precise. Jesus squinted, analyzing everything, her angle, her pace, the look in her narrowed eyes. His stomach dropped. She wasn't crossing by mistake, she was tracking something. Or someone, and it mattered. Across the street, Gu's reflection flickered in glass. He stood alone, unaware of Jesus nearby. Something behind the windows shifted slightly, catching Jesus' eye like a warning, just barely whispered. Gu stepped forward with ease, his usual calm presence masking what Jesus feared was coming. A car shot around the corner, tires slicing. Silence trouble arrived without a single warning. Jesus shouted his name, voice cracking through the noise like a final flare in fog. Jesus sprinted full force, every muscle wired tight as instinct screamed something was terribly wrong. Gu turned slowly, recognizing Jesus' urgency, but confusion clouded his features like a delayed reaction. Jesus' gut twisted. The timeline still wasn't right. This version might be worse than the last. He yelled again, telling Gu to run, his voice heavy with dread and desperation combined. Gu finally moved, eyes wide with fear, as the world tilted sharply against both men. Gu barely dodged a spinning bike, chaos snapping too fast for thought or logic. Screams and metal clashed, an explosion of movement, pain and steel blurring together in an instant. Jesus collided with another biker, everything spinning in brutal slow motion before the street shattered. Bodies rolled, helmets cracked, sparks danced across pavement as tires screeched toward broken balance. Darkness pulled at the edge of Jesus' vision, pain echoing louder than the sirens behind. Jesus pushed himself up, bloodied but grinning. He had stopped the worst from happening again. Gu stirred beside him, clearly shaken but alive, his breath catching in relief and confusion. Crowds rushed in. Jesus kept calm, checking Gu's condition with urgency but controlled hands. A colleague arrived quickly, face tight with concern, assessing the damage with quick, trained eyes. Jesus exhaled hard. "Hospital first," he said, one goal down, but the chase wasn't finished yet. With Gu in safe hands, Jesus turned his focus to the vehicle that vanished earlier. A black car peeled off in the distance, suspicious timing, suspicious driver, no visible plates. He called it in, fast and clear, giving plate numbers and street direction over dispatch. His instincts buzzed louder when he remembered the woman earlier. Everything felt too conveniently lined up. But for now, he stuck to the lead. The car was the only traceable thread. Helmet secure, Jesus leaned forward and tightened his grip, his eyes fixed on the fleeing car. He ignored the noise in his head, focusing only on the black blur ahead. Red light flashed, but Jesus didn't slow. He zipped through, the mission outweighing hesitation. The suspect's car swerved, skidding just barely around traffic, reckless, bold, and trying to disappear fast. Jesus gritted his teeth, every second closing distance between duty and whatever came next behind the wheel. Jesus leaned in hard, tires burning heat against pavement as he locked onto the target. The black car veered sharply, but Jesus anticipated it, closing in with surgical precision and control. With one quick motion, he shattered the window glass, flying like stars in daylight chaos. Landing firm, he yelled with authority, cutting through confusion like a siren slicing still air. The suspect froze, startled by the speed. Jesus' stance left no room for second chances. Jesus pinned the suspect fast, frustration boiling underneath as resistance met him instead of surrender. His glare sharpened instantly, patience gone. The next move would speak louder than any warning. The blade flashed. Suddenly his body reacted first, no time to think about anything else. Everything escalated too fast. The guy never meant for it to go this far. He bolted down the street, feet pounding pavement, mind blank with panic and adrenaline. Jesus watched the runner quietly, steady breath, calculating distance between them and the car. He aimed without hesitation, pulled the trigger, taser wires zipped, body dropped, crowd frozen in place. Jesus exhaled slowly, letting his tense muscles ease while checking for any deeper wounds. The situation was under control now, but cleanup was always messier than the chase. Officers shouted around him. Ambulance screeched and chaos followed, calm like it always did. The hospital stood tall under morning light, a weird contrast to the earlier madness. With steady steps, he walked through the entrance, Jesus off help like nothing happened. Something about the quiet hallway made his stomach turn, instincts humming in the background again. A nurse spotted the blood and ran over, steps light but full of urgency. The staff moved quickly now, one voice calling for backup, another grabbing the phone. He pulled out his badge, hand steady, just part of the routine at this point. They pointed toward the bench nearby. He sat down, letting silence settle for once. Jesus listened quietly, face unreadable, while the man stumbled through a confused explanation. The guy's voice trembled, panic seeping in as he recalled the earlier car chase. Jesus raised a finger, signaling calm, not wanting attention drawn in the hospital. He explained everything, straight hit and run, armed suspect now in custody. No big deal to him. The man frowned, guilt sinking in, convinced things spiraled only because he was there. Jesus shook his head, Jesus off the concern, not thinking twice about what happened. He sighed loud enough to cut tension, casually resting as the guy stared nervously. The other man quietly wept, overwhelmed, unsure how to deal with Jesus' calm. The doctor returned with updates, shirtless Jesus already halfway into pretending he wasn't injured. Despite orders to rest, he flexed and smiled. Jesus off pain like usual. They sat outside the ER, sunlight spilling in, both pretending things were kind of normal. Haesu leaned back, dismissing drama as his friend talked about near death like a punchline. The guy tried defending his guilt, but Haesu joked it off without effort. Haesu suggested visiting the station. Haesug passed objections like they were optional. His voice dropped. What if the crash wasn't random? Something darker might be behind it. Haesu stepped out casually, unaware of the shouting echoing through the hospital hallway ahead. A loud voice erupted, someone screaming, losing it in the middle of the waiting area. Two guards struggled to hold back a man, Haesug wildly, pure rage on display. Haesu paused, expression calm, watching the outburst without surprise, just reading the situation quietly. The guy shouted one name, Kang Sun-mi, like she owed him something big and emotional. An Seo-eun walked in, sharp suit, cool eyes like she owned every second of silence. Meanwhile, the guy kept yelling, red-faced, throwing words around like knives in all directions. She stepped forward, unfazed, asking what happened, voice steady amid the growing chaos. He ranted louder, blaming her, claiming lies and betrayal like they were hard evidence. Security closed in as he demanded to see the nurse, screaming threats without thinking twice. Kang Sun-mi stood frozen behind a wall, hands trembling, eyes filled with fear. Her name tag gleamed under the lights, clear and simple, yet now tied to something dark. Turns out, kindness during treatment led to twisted feelings and dangerous misunderstanding. The man mistook compassion for love, creating stories in his head that weren't real. Seo-eun leaned in to whisper quietly, already piecing together how this mess had started. Sun-mi stayed frozen, clinging to her coworker, heart pounding while chaos unfolded nearby. Seo-eun stayed composed, eyes sharp, making the call to end it all cleanly. The man's face darkened, boiling with rage, unable to accept what was happening around him. Without warning, he lunged forward, feet slamming the floor, fists drawn with wild fury. His anger exploded into movement, launching himself straight at Seo-eun with reckless, blind aggression. Security scrambled as his fists flew wildly, knocking chairs, arms, and people out of place. Panic spread fast, everyone ducked or backed away while bodies clashed and collided hard. One punch landed clean on a guard, sending her Haesug heavily to the floor. Seo-eun fell next, caught off guard mid-step, hair whipping as gravity took over. The man roared again, eyes bloodshot, charging through the mess without hesitation or control. Haesu stepped in like lightning, effortlessly intercepting the wild punch with one steady arm. His body twisted smoothly, grabbing the attacker's arm, flipping him over with absolute control. The man slammed into the ground, loud and final, limbs flailing from the impact. Haesu straightened up, Haesug off his jacket while the hallway slowly settled back down. Around him, people stared quietly, unsure if they just witnessed justice or something supernatural. Haesu casually checked on the others while curious staff gathered to whisper and stare. One guy gave him a thumbs up, clearly impressed by that takedown earlier. An Seo-eun entered quietly, her heels clicking with intention, aura as sharp as ever. She walked straight toward them, eyes locked on Haesu, carrying purpose in every step. He turned slowly, reading the room, as she finally introduced herself to the group. An extended her hand, and they shook briefly near the hallway outside the ear. She thanked him directly, graceful, firm, grateful for what he did without any exaggeration. Haesu kept it simple, explaining it was routine, nothing more than part of duty. She didn't seem convinced most wouldn't act that way in such a wild moment. She handed over a sleek black card, eyes watching his reaction closely. Whispers spread fast, someone recognized her name and status, tied to a major business family. Haesu glanced at the card, connecting dots about who she really was. An stood confidently, arms crossed, still keeping things professional despite all the tension. She reached out again, trying to offer something more, to repay what he'd done. Haesu declined calmly, reminding her that a cop doesn't take favors, especially not like that. One man stepped forward, bowing slightly, offering sincere thanks for everything Haesu had handled today. Haesu gave a slight nod, keeping it humble as usual before preparing to leave. Rumors swirled. Seo-eun seemed almost unreal, like someone straight out of a celebrity magazine cover. People whispered about her success, hotels, media, even this hospital quietly under her control. Haesu walked off, card in pocket, wondering why someone like her needed his number. Haesu reached for the car door, mind still turning over everything that just happened today. Haesu sat quietly in the passenger seat, thoughts circling the strange events from yesterday. The driver smiled and shifted gears, casually unaware of Haesu's heavy thoughts brewing in silence. They pulled into the long driveway, the engine humming steady beneath a growing cloud of suspicion. Suited figures stood waiting outside, as if the meeting had been planned down to seconds. One woman glanced toward Haesu, her expression unreadable, silently signaling Kim to observe him closely. Mr. Kim gave a subtle nod, slipping back without a word into his watchful posture. The air felt tighter now, the kind of quiet that usually means something big is coming. Their footsteps echoed with purpose as they entered the building through polished glass double doors. Outside, the sun shone too brightly for what was unfolding behind those corporate walls. Haesoo glanced back. Something about the man triggered a memory that wouldn't fully come forward. In the observation room, Haesoo scanned faces, his mind working through details like clockwork gears. The suspect fidgeted near the table, shoulders hunched, eyes darting nervously across reflective glass walls. Papers rustled as detectives flipped through case files, the suspect's story shifting with every question implied. A sudden outburst came with red cheeks and excuses, his words falling apart under rising pressure. Across the room, an officer entered calmly, holding a file that could change everything they knew. Haesoo burst through the station doors, urgency in every step after hearing the latest lead. The burner phone dumped near Gangwa added weight to their growing list of strange details. As officers secured CCTV footage, tension in the air grew thicker with every silent second. Haesoo's thoughts lingered on Gangwa. Something about that place didn't sit right in his chest. Gu was already on board when Haesoo moved. He followed without ever needing a reason. They scanned the paused footage, each frame revealing more than the street cameras probably intended. One woman's movement stood out, turning away instead of crossing like the others around her. Haesoo recalled her hesitation, how she stopped mid-step after spotting something, or someone nearby. She clutched her phone tightly, and the crash happened just as she shifted directions. Gu pointed at the screen, but Haesoo was already drifting, mind piecing together buried fragments. The memory clicked a face, familiar not from the case, but from months back unexpectedly. A client's daughter, maybe. Her mother, Park Makryun, once came up in casual conversation. Gu had mentioned her. She lived in a nursing home now, tucked away from everything. Years of handling her finances built quiet loyalty, the kind that outlives business on paper. That loyalty brought him back, standing quietly by her bedside, unknowingly circling back to truth. Gu had met the daughter during that visit, but something about her presence felt off. Despite being family, tension sat between them like an invisible wall, cold and unmoving. Curious, Gu visited again this time. The old lady opened up, finally revealing a painful truth. The daughter only returned to take money, nothing else. Violence and greed had replaced any care. She'd built a fortune from her business, but intended to give everything away to charity. That decision, made public, hit hard, especially if someone else had plans for her wealth. Kim Im-suk, born in 1975, suddenly stood out in more than just blurry footage. On the CCTV, she matched perfectly the walk, the clothes, the glance before the crash. They got an address fast and moved quickly. If she ran, the trail might vanish. She was found in the parking lot, crouched low, hiding behind a car for hours. Turns out she wasn't alone. The hit-and-run driver was more than an accomplice, but her lover. Together, they'd met multiple times, carefully timing each step to execute the crash cleanly. Motive was clear: remove the obstacle and follow through with controlling the remaining fortune. They got 15 years. Premeditated crime, false testimony, and stabbing a cop sealed their sentence tight. The next day, Haesoo left the station, mind still spinning, but smile just slightly returning. After work, Haesoo stepped outside, enjoying the evening air when Gu suddenly called out. His voice was calm, but something in the tone made Haesoo pause a moment longer. Gu asked to meet in person, an unusual request that instantly raised Haesoo's curiosity. Haesoo didn't hesitate and offered to meet near home, already sensing something more personal. They ended up by a small noodle shop, the streetlights casting a familiar glow. A warm drink and instant noodles, simple, comforting things that oddly grounded serious conversations. Gu didn't rush the topic, stirring his soup slowly like thoughts still simmered quietly. Haesoo matched his calm, but the change in Gu's behavior didn't go unnoticed at all. Something was off. Gu never made small talk unless something deeper was weighing on him. He finally spoke, hinting at the accident again. Eyes focused but distant, like remembering pain. Gu explained a strange sensation, something surreal during the crash, like time twisted around him. It wasn't just survival he remembered, it was something Haesoo did that shouldn't have happened. The confusion was clear, but thankfulness kept him grounded in the reality he knew. Still, one thing replayed in his mind: how Haesoo seemed to know the crash was coming. That moment didn't align with memory. Gu remembered being warned, but it shouldn't have been possible. Haesoo's eyes haunted Gu. He looked like someone who already knew the outcome far too well. That stare, full of certainty, stayed with Gu longer than the crash itself ever did. Despite chaos around them, Haesoo had looked calm, too calm for someone in that situation. Gu couldn't ignore it anymore. He had to know, even if answers changed everything. Haesoo stayed quiet, stirring his noodles, debating how much truth he should actually reveal tonight. He couldn't say he had powers. Nothing supernatural ever sat well with a logical mind. But he'd heard it before. Trauma rewired perception. Memory filled in things creatively. One case even mirrored this, the brain fabricating a sense of being saved from death. As Gu waited, Haesoo searched for words that felt honest without revealing too much. Truth was, he had seen the car, but not the way Gu imagined it. A near miss caught his attention instinct, maybe. But Gu saw more in that moment. Gu smiled gratefully, not Pyu Hae-sug further. He promised to use this second chance for good. Hae-soo chuckled, told him to eat the ramyun was going to burn if he stalled. Later that night, Hae-soo lay awake, eyes on the ceiling, head filled with looping thoughts. Rewind only stretched 60 minutes, but when life could reset, every moment suddenly mattered more than ever. The crash replayed in Hae-soo's mind, sharper now, memories clearer with each passing rewind. He stared into the distance, wondering how long he could keep pretending nothing was unusual. Playing it normal meant fewer questions, but that meant slower reactions sometimes. Seconds made all difference. If someone died because he hesitated to act, that weight would never leave his chest. For now, saving people had to come first, even if he didn't understand the rest. His breath burned in his chest. Running wasn't as easy as it used to be. A wound from earlier ached, a reminder that he wasn't quite the unstoppable force anymore. Healing had slowed. Time no longer felt like an endless resource like in his 20s. As he caught his breath, a familiar name rang in his ears: Officer Hasu. The call came from An Seo-jun. Calm voice, but Hae-soo already sensed something deeper brewing. The face from the past lingered in Hae-soo's mind, regret flickering behind his cautious smile. Outside a small shop, Hae-soo waited quietly, holding drinks, blending into the morning calm. A sleek black car pulled in, clearly not local. He already knew who stepped out. He handed the drink casually, no small talk, just routine, as if they'd done this before. The woman accepted it with a nod, calm and sharp-eyed, flanked by her assistant. She thanked him, but her eyes hinted this wasn't a simple thanks for the drink moment. Buy two, get one free, Hae-soo shrugged. Easier than explaining why he really offered it. She smiled faintly, almost amused, and took a slow sip while watching him closely. Her assistant looked uneasy, maybe not used to such laid-back interaction in streetwear and snacks. She sipped her drink again, lowering her voice with curiosity, clearly preparing to shift the tone. Hae-soo stood ready, half expecting a question, but her next words caught him slightly off guard. She recounted the riot, how officers struggled while he had handled it effortlessly, without hesitation. Unlike others who froze or hesitated, he acted. Efficient, quiet, strong. She remembered every detail. Without wasting time, she made her offer personal bodyguard. Direct, confident, and already pre-calculated. Salary came next, casually mentioned, like money was an afterthought beside capability and loyalty. Hae-soo listened in silence. Fingers Hae-soog the bottle. His answer, though unspoken, hovered in the air. Hae-soo paused, gripping the bottle, his thoughts shifting to what really mattered in this moment. If I work with you, can I still chase down the bad guys? His purpose was never money, just the chance to stop those who hurt the innocent. That's why he joined the force. That goal still burned brighter than any paycheck offered. Her smile softened, accepting his choice without Pyu Hae-sug respect in her eyes, not disappointment. She gently set down a folder, her voice steady. This was her original intention anyway. Whatever it was, she'd thought it through. Not a bribe, something meaningful instead. Hae-soo instinctively raised his hands. He didn't want any misunderstanding. Money wasn't what he needed. Inside the folder, no bills, just a paper certificate, neat and formal in design. His eyebrows lifted slightly, caught off guard by its contents and the quiet weight it carried. A donation in my name, he muttered. She'd honored his values, not just flattered them. She watched his reaction carefully, then gave a tiny nod. Mission partially accomplished, in her words. Standing, she made her exit gracefully. No drama, no sales pitch, just respectful distance. Hae-soo watched the car pull away, still mulling over her approach. It left an impression. Different from the rest, he thought, nodding once. Thanks for the gift. Safe trip. She smiled subtly, her eyes still sharp, clearly analyzing him long after their conversation ended. Hae-soo paused, a thought lingering, one last piece of advice he couldn't keep to himself. He suggested giving Kim another chance, acknowledging his past efforts weren't entirely without value. The decision wasn't his, but he knew potential when he saw it even in rivals. She nodded once, giving nothing away, but her silence felt like a quiet agreement forming. The car finally pulled away, leaving Hae-soo alone with a cooling drink and reflection. Inside the vehicle, her thoughts lingered too clearly. He wasn't like the others she'd met. She admitted his presence was unusual, but also Hae-sug in a world built on image. The assistant teased, reminding her he'd out-Hae-soo'd her chance, yet admiration still outweighed any resentment. Her smile returned faintly, hiding something deeper behind her gaze. A single word remained: policeman. The city blurred past red and blue lights as 101 patrol responded to dispatch. Traffic thickened, but urgency pushed them through narrow lanes and scattered evening commuters aside. Something ahead caught their eyes: Hae-sug lights, halted cars, and pedestrians crowding a dim intersection. Tension snapped as yelling cut through the noise, a furious man flailing from his taxi window. Police presence grew fast, confusion settling in. Someone was fleeing the scene while chaos unfolded behind. Tension flared as a man yelled, "Frustration Klehe Sug," with Flahe Sug lights and emergency urgency. Confusion spread fast, claims of lies and schemes fueled the fire before explanations could settle. He shoved past, anger unchecked, accusing workers of fraud with loud, bitter resentment. Officers remained calm, asserting control while shielding the patient from chaos already spiraling outside. Jesus braced himself, suddenly sensing something off, fingers tightening around the steering wheel instinctively. His partners shouted a cue. They moved, sirens screaming louder as instincts kicked in hard. Tires screeched, smoke curled. The chase had begun, sharp turns slicing through midnight tension. Jesus took the wheel with purpose, adrenaline rising with every blaring siren behind them. The vehicle sped down the lane, weaving through late traffic like a needle through thread. Lights blurred, pressure built. The hunt for the runner had fully ignited without warning. They closed in, cutting across traffic every second, shrinking the gap between predator and prey. The suspect turned, shocked by headlights, slipping backward from panic and disbelief. Jesus' foot never left the pedal, precision guiding pursuit more than sheer speed. The man stumbled again, rage rising, his words useless against a city that saw everything. Chase lines blurred behind them, but Jesus' focus was locked straight ahead, no time wasted. Jesus stepped from the car, calm and focused, immediately commanding the chaos into control. The situation cooled. Orders were followed. Respect clashed with fear in a single glance. A quiet thank you slipped out, the kind said only when pride and panic collapsed together. But rage returned fast. The older man shouted again, ego louder than common sense. He lunged suddenly, grabbing the officer with clumsy force, spiraling the moment into reckless violence. Eyes widened, fists clenched, rage found a target, even if it made no sense now. With one heavy motion, he swung downward, all frustration focused on Punihe Sug presence. The officer dodged fast, momentum sending the man Krehe Sug against cold metal behind him. Silence returned briefly. The crowd had grown. Cameras were raised. Everyone was watching everything unfold. The black box is recording, someone muttered nearby. Evidence would outlast emotions every single time. Jesus stood still, waiting. The older man blinked, realizing his actions now had consequences. Your number? He asked, hesitating, as realization chipped away at earlier arrogance. Jesus gave it without pause, letting silence do what words never could in moments like this. Calm but firm, he handed over instructions, assurance given, but accountability was just as important. Next time, that ambulance might carry someone you love. The man lowered his head, finally quiet. Jesus glanced up from the desk, letting the morning light warm his half-awake expression. A quiet nod came from Jiho, his coffee untouched, thoughts lost in the silence. Nothing felt urgent yet, just paperwork and old cases stacked beside forgotten memos and faded files. Jesus yawned, jaw stretching wide, muscles relaxing for the first time in a long while. Jiho looked over, surprised he'd never seen Jesus drop his guard like that before. In the patrol car, the city passed slowly, neon signs flickering over tired rooftops. Jiho stared ahead, noting how Jesus barely blinked, always focused, always 10 steps ahead. The radio crackled, shattering the calm, calling all units to respond to a sudden threat. Jesus' fingers tightened on the wheel as sirens began wailing and tires bit into pavement. The streetlights streaked by, buildings blurring, tension rising as reality crashed back into motion. Police lights painted the street blue and red, casting shadows that danced across broken glass. Officers moved in formation, surrounding the suspect vehicle with practiced steps and measured breath. Jesus stepped out first, eyes sharp, taking in the chaos with quiet precision and clarity. Jiho followed quickly, boots crunching against pavement, heart thudding in sync with distant sirens. Ahead, the van door creaked open, revealing something none of them were ready to face. Chaos erupted as fists flew, bodies colliding under neon lights and distant sirens echoing nearby. A sudden flash lit the alleyway, something heavy smacked Jesus into the metal emergency door. 3 men stepped forward, confident and calm, eyes scanning for weakness in the forming defense. Another wave of movement followed, fast, tight footwork, bodies twisting through the cluttered, narrow street. Each swing carried weight and intent, as if they'd fought like this their whole lives. Someone shouted behind them, panic rising, blood visible now, soaking a shoulder, face pale with fear. One of the attackers lunged low, sweeping legs with a force that cracked the pavement. A backup officer arrived, already sweating, realizing they were seriously outnumbered in this alley trap. Men crashed into one another, breath ragged, fists bruised, concrete painted with scuff marks and blood. Jesus stood still for a moment, eyes locked, wondering what these people were running on. Another figure approached him fast, wide stance, face unreadable, a quiet threat in every movement. Jesus dodged left, countered with ease, hand landing against ribs like thunder through empty space. More officers spilled into the alleyway, called in from nearby patrols, boots pounding against asphalt, orders barked between gasps for breath. But it was clear they needed more than voices. As backup rushed past, a shadow slipped behind the chaos, unnoticed but absolutely intentional. The fight intensified, officers thrown back, unable to match the raw strength surging from their opponents. Jiho stumbled, dazed, watching helplessly as another officer was dragged across broken tile and debris. Their training wasn't meant for this, not this kind of close-range chaos with wild resistance. Thoughts spun fast, call for help, but would anyone even arrive before things got worse? Among the panic, one officer clenched his jaw, hand hovering over his sidearm in hesitation. Jesus entered the fray with speed, no warning, just motion and a foot to the chest. More bodies dropped, unconscious or barely holding on, scattered like dominoes in a storm. A female officer sprinted over, face pale, eyes locked on the officer crumpled beside her. Jesus gave a nod, bloodied but steady, then turned toward the alley's darkest end. The others regrouped behind him, tension still thick, unsure what was waiting beyond the corner. Jesus walked forward slowly, footsteps heavy, each one deliberate against the pulsing streetlight haze. Ahead, a man dragged himself up, still defiant, fists tightening around his last resolve. He spat blood, glaring with wild energy, something unreadable Jesus behind swollen, bruised eyes. Muscles coiled as he lunged, shouting something Jesus didn't care to hear or respond to. Their fists met in the middle, raw force against experience, cracking air and bones at once. The knife was close, too close, as Jesus caught it before it pierced anything vital. His grip didn't loosen. He stared directly into the man's eyes, cold and unflinching. Nearby, an officer gasped, fearing the worst as her voice cracked with rising panic. She closed her eyes, preparing herself for the worst possible sound behind the silence. But then came a thud. Not final, just the sound of someone being knocked out. Another attacker leapt forward. Too eager, his swing wild, Jesus ducked without breaking stride. The counter came instantly, elbow slamming into a ribcage like a bat cracking against stone. Two more closed in from the side, one hesitated, the other didn't get the chance. Jesus' knee rose, stopping the second mid-lunge, the sound echoing like thunder in a tunnel. The female officer stood frozen, unsure if what she just saw actually happened that fast. Jesus stepped over bodies, breathing steady, not a scratch on him despite the chaos. From the shadows, another man charged, a weapon raised high, screaming louder than the sirens. Calm eyes met the threat. Jesus sidestepped, pivoted, and dropped him with a precise strike. The alley was filled with bodies now, some groaning, most unconscious, one trying to crawl. Jesus brushed off his uniform, unfazed, already checking for the next danger in the dark. Officers stood back, eyes wide, whispering quietly like they'd just seen a legend come alive. Jesus faced the horde alone, footsteps echoing beneath Jesus lights and pounding combat boots. His mind sharpened, no hesitation, no fear, only purpose as the world seemed to slow. With clenched fists and quiet resolve, he launched forward faster than any eye could follow. One tried grabbing him, mistake, he twisted, countered, and dropped the man like a stone. Fists flew. Jesus moved like water, weaving through chaos while bodies collapsed around him. Every strike landed clean, every motion exact, like he'd trained for this night forever. In the aftermath, dust settled. Groans replaced shouting. Jesus stood surrounded by silence again. Junior officer watched, stunned, mumbling that he already knew Jesus was strong, just not this strong. Somewhere nearby, a voice echoed, confused, but certain someone recognized that name from stories they'd nearly forgotten. He's like our ace, one whispered. Maybe even tougher than Kang, if that's possible. Another man froze, recalling the detective with the highest arrest rate this entire month. Jesus' name cut through the air, drawing attention like a spark in dry grass. One of the thugs narrowed his eyes, heart racing as familiarity crept into his expression. Suddenly, it clicked. He'd seen Jesus' face before. And the memory wasn't a pleasant one. Recognition hit hard, eyes wide. Breath caught memories of pain and fear Jesus through his mind. The name finally surfaced, loud and clear. Jesus, the physical therapist turned cop with impact. He was infamous for takedowns so precise, thugs limped away with regret and medical bills. Even with fines and reports, Jesus never slowed, just kept breaking bones like before. Paramedics rush through chaos. Officer Jesus watches his injured friend loaded into the emergency helicopter. The wounded officer groans painfully, clutching his side. Medical staff struggle to stabilize him quickly. A medic inspects the wound carefully, confirming, luckily, the wound isn't that deep. He'll survive. With effort, the injured officer sits upright, his voice weak but sincere. Thank you for saving me. Jesus crosses his arms, relieved, impressive. No police casualties despite such a large-scale violent incident. 15 minutes earlier, Officer Jesus charged fearlessly. landing a powerful punch directly at the gang leader. The gang leader spat blood, collapsing to his knees, overwhelmed by Jesus' brutal counterattack. Jesus stood over him, coldly warning, "Try to mess with me again, and regret it." Terrified, the gang underling attempted to flee, stammering, "Wait! I didn't mean anything serious!" Jesus lunged forward again, shouting, "Wait my ass!" determined to capture every last criminal present. Jesus sprinted forward, pushing through the crowd, determined to end the confrontation immediately. A police officer swung his baton with precision, stopping the last escaping thug in his tracks. The thug collapsed instantly, his weapon clattering against the floor as his vision blurred. "What?" A bystander gasped, witnessing the overwhelming force displayed by the police. The gang leader clenched his fists, furious and humiliated by the complete failure of his men. Jesus struck the gang leader's face decisively, ending the chaotic fight with a final blow. He sat quietly afterward, recalling the wounds sustained while trying to save a fallen comrade. A colleague approached, recognizing him. "Officer Shin? You're the one who helped tremendously today, right?" Jesus nodded politely, replying, "Ah, yes. Thank you for assisting with my injuries earlier today." The officer smiled knowingly. "You're the physical therapist, aren't you? Quite impressive under pressure." Captain Ryu leaned casually, asking, "So, what made you apply for a local police station?" Jesus hesitated briefly before replying, "About that, it's a bit complicated to explain right now." Captain Ryu chuckled lightly, suggesting, "If it's difficult, don't worry. But it feels like a waste." He added, "Someone with your skills shouldn't waste them." "Planning to rejoin the violent crimes unit?" Jesus answered quietly, "Why wouldn't I? If only I had the chance." Captain Ryu looked curious. Detective Oh Kang-sak introduced himself formally, standing tall and confident before Officer Jesus. Jesus smiled faintly, replying, "It's not a bad offer for me to consider seriously." "Oh, of course you can," Jesus added, nodding in agreement with Detective O's proposition. Suddenly, a junior officer rushed over, shouting, "Oh, Officer Shin!" Breaking the conversation abruptly, Detective O smiled, concluding, "Then, please contact us. Thanks for your hard work today, Officer Shin." Jesus quietly watched Detective O leave, a heavy decision weighing on his determined mind. He clenched his fists, thinking, "This isn't over. I'll make them pay for everything they've done." Meanwhile, gang members nursed their injuries, angered by their humiliating defeat against the overpowering police. One thug muttered bitterly, "This is far from over. We'll finish what we started soon enough." Back outside, Jesus gathered his team, knowing tonight was only the beginning of something bigger. The Hook clan expanded quickly, gathering dangerous thugs eager for fast money and violent power. They relentlessly grew stronger, seizing every possible opportunity to increase their financial influence and territory. Drugs, prostitution, and trafficking became their main sources of revenue, corrupting countless innocent lives. Their unchecked expansion eventually reached Steel Clan's territory, threatening established power structures and control. Madam Kim, Steel Clan's influential figure, sneered disdainfully, "How dare those filthy thugs enter here?" Hook Clan members arrived, eyes filled with anger, glaring directly at Madam Kim's confident posture. They exchanged silent glances, their rage growing under Madam Kim's blatant display of disrespect. Madam Kim ordered calmly, "Close the place and get off work. Don't stay here tonight." Infuriated by the insult, the Hook Clan prepared for brutal retaliation against the Steel Clan. That night, the Hook Clan mercilessly eliminated every Steel Clan underling guarding the dying knight. Madam Kim stepped outside defiantly, facing the furious Hook Clan members without any visible fear. A thug shouted, "Money? You bitch! How dare you talk like you're above us?" Another thug sneered cruelly. "We know there's plenty of money inside that worthless body of yours." Madam Kim struggled fiercely, screaming, "Let me go," as they dragged her away violently. After harvesting her organs, they dumped her lifeless body behind Steel Clan headquarters like garbage. Jung-so stood before the gruesome sight, his fury boiling after seeing Madam Kim's lifeless body. He roared with rage, "Find those bastards right now!" Shaking with uncontrollable anger and grief, the Steel Clan received intelligence that the Hook Clan had regrouped at the dying night. Steel Clan soldiers stormed the place immediately, launching a fierce and deadly counterattack against them. During the brutal fight, Kim Jung-so suffered severe injuries, later waking painfully in a hospital. With trembling hands, Jung-so grabbed a pen, struggling to write despite his weakened condition. And with that final effort, the case was formally handed over to the detectives. He carefully wrote a message, knowing this might be his last contribution to justice. The note read, "Please make sure to catch those bastards. Always." His hands stopped moving. With fading strength, Jung-so's final breaths escaped. His fight had ended, but justice remained. News reported the dying night incident had ended swiftly, thanks to fast police intervention efforts. Shin Hae-soo relaxed at home, enjoying snacks, When his phone vibrated with an incoming call, answering casually, he heard Oh Kang-sok's voice asking, "How's your body? Are you recovering well?" Jesus smiled slightly, replying confidently, "It's all healed. Recovery didn't take long this time." Oh Kang-sok teased, "That's not normal recovery speed." Anyway, police handled everything perfectly this time. Oh Kang-sok mentioned, "By the way, we've added your name to the violent crimes units list." Jesus responded humbly, "There was no need for that, but still, thank you." Kang-sok reminded him, "Take care of these opportunities. You might not get another chance later." Jesus ended the call, smiling slightly. "Thank you for your hard work as well," Kang-sok thought privately. He's a spirited person. I'd really like to work alongside him someday. Officer Jesus answered the sudden call, recognizing the familiar voice of Executive Gu immediately. Executive Gu requested casually, "Let's meet soon. I'd like you to accompany me somewhere important." Jesus asked seriously, "Is it urgent?" Gu responded, "Daehan Bank's client information was stolen recently." Jesus got another lead. It didn't feel urgent, but something felt strange this time. He'd heard worse tips before, but this one had a weird feeling he couldn't shake. Even if it was false, he figured checking it himself was the fastest way. He grabbed the car keys and headed out without saying much to anyone around. The city moved quietly as his car approached the bank with sirens already nearby. Jiwoo sat at the table, trying not to think about him again like always. Her appetite disappeared as fast as her patience, though her plate said otherwise, nearly clean. She pushed away her tray, pretending she hadn't just eaten everything in under 5 minutes. Thinking about Jesus made her annoyed. No job security, no house, yet always so confident. Without a word, he had left again, like a gust of wind slipping past. The moment passed, and Jiwoo stepped outside. Bruhei sug off thoughts she didn't ask to revisit. On the sidewalk, she noticed him again unexpected and somehow always at the wrong time. His wide shoulders gave him away immediately, standing there like it meant something important. She rolled her eyes, wondering why he kept appearing without reason or warning like that. Stepping forward, she closed the space between them, unsure what she wanted to happen next. Jiwoo stood confidently, arms crossed, masking the unease bubbling beneath her calm surface expression. Jesus didn't flinch. He casually stepped forward, not explaining much. Like he usually did, Jiwoo narrowed her eyes, sensing something strange. This wasn't one of his usual spontaneous appearances. She didn't expect a meeting. He wasn't even supposed to be here today. Then, someone new arrived, calling his name. Jiwoo blinked, caught off guard by the situation. Jiwoo tensed up instantly. She hadn't expected to meet someone this high-ranking at work. The branch manager introduced himself with flair, instantly shifting the room's energy with his presence. Everyone turned their attention. Jesus shook hands smoothly, like he belonged at the center. Jiwoo stood frozen. Things weren't adding up. Jesus was acting too formal, too composed. Her coworker whispered excitedly, nudging her. Jiwoo just stared, still unsure what she was witnessing. Jiwoo mumbled a confused response, glancing toward the very important person sign now catching her full attention. The manager smiled proudly, hinting they'd treat someone like him with extra caution from now. He gestured politely. Jesus nodded, then followed, leaving behind puzzled looks and murmurs around them. Jiwoo stared as the two men walked away, still processing everything she had just seen. Something stirred inside her, determined and sudden. She wouldn't just sit back and watch him win. A message popped up on the screen, a familiar name Flahaesug with sudden urgency again. Jesus glanced sideways, catching subtle movement nearby while pretending not to notice anything at all. Jiwoo smiled slightly, a quiet challenge flickering in her eyes, daring him to respond. She held the phone, confidence rising. It was her turn to steer the moment. Her voice turned sweet, cheerful, but underneath, she had her own plan in motion. She played along with the call, her voice polite, posture composed, eyes sharp. He stood nearby, hearing everything, his expression unreadable despite the words clearly meant for him. Her words hit, casually delivered, but calculated like chess pieces moving with steady confidence. He smiled anyway, Bruhei sug it off. Some battles didn't need fighting out loud today. Jiwoo sat down after ending the call, her face calm but heart running fast. She laughed it off. Bruhei sug away nerves, pretending none of it really bothered her. Outside, clouds passed lazily, while plans and pride shifted beneath everyone's quiet surface. Jesus moved on, focused now, returning his attention to the investigation that brought him here. The file was missing some pages. A visit had been logged, but oddly brief. Jesus' question hung in the air, his expression firm. Whoever came last had answers he needed. Jesus held the business card tightly. That name Park Youngchul brought questions flooding into his thoughts. He made the call immediately, each ring sounding heavier than the one before it. The voice answered calmly, familiar and smooth, like it had been waiting all this time. Jesus asked directly, trying to skip pleasantries. "No time for small talk today." The man agreed to meet, not surprised. Something in his voice hinted at old truths. The small cafe felt oddly warm for such a heavy conversation waiting to happen inside. The older man studied Hae-soo, eyes sharp, scanning every movement like a seasoned detective would. He said Hae-soo looked like his father Jing-seok, and the air instantly felt colder. Hae-soo leaned forward, voice low, needing to know the truth about the man he lost. A funeral flashed in his memory faces he remembered, but this man wasn't among them. The man claimed he'd left the team just before the incident. Timing too convenient, honestly. Still sipping calmly, he said the case was buried before anyone bothered asking real questions. Hae-soo admitted he was still investigating, even if no one else wanted to go deeper. Then came the question, the one that sat at the center of everything: was it murder? Without hesitation, Hae-soo answered. The doubt never left him, not once. He believed his father was murdered. The older detective tapped his glass, pausing as he shifted into full-on mentor mode. He reminded Hae-soo the first step is motive, always motive, because it leads straight to suspects. Hae-soo nodded quietly, absorbing the lesson while thinking back to the case haunting his mind. One man back then stood out shady, twitchy, but there'd never been any solid proof. No evidence, no leverage, just gut instinct. Hae-soo admitted it plainly. I don't have anything yet. Hae-soo clenched his jaw. Maybe there wasn't evidence, or maybe someone had wiped it clean. The detective agreed, calm but firm. Erase evidence, erase truth. It's a strategy used too often. He shifted gears. Then you investigate the victim. Dig until something doesn't line up. Hae-soo's heart beat a little faster. That idea? It made everything feel closer than ever. Start with your father's life, the detective said, sliding over a thick folder. See what's hidden. Hae-soo jumped to his feet, surprised by the sudden weight of the folder in hand. The older detective stayed calm, insisting the real test was buried inside that thick brown file. Hae-soo understood if he missed something crucial now, nothing else would matter in the end anyway. The photo of his father lay on the file, cold, quiet, final. But Hae-soo knew it wasn't the end. He turned the case file over in his hands. There had to be something inside that everyone else missed. The room was quiet, just the sound of his breath. Everything about this felt too familiar, too staged. The patterns were too perfect, every case tied up clean. It looked more like a cover-up than real work. One word kept coming up: suicide, but none of this looked like someone who chose to end their own life. The file marked Lee Seung-jin's death. It didn't add up. Something in it kept pulling Hae-soo deeper into doubt. The old detective's voice came back to him, talking about rushed conclusions and missing links that no one noticed. Even when it ended officially, his father kept searching. Not for justice anymore, just for something that felt honest. Gang Shik-won's name appeared in the mess. One thread in a twisted knot his father tried to untangle alone. Hae-soo wasn't sure if this man was guilty or used. Either way, the truth was still buried deep. The penitentiary loomed ahead, gray and indifferent. Hae-soo had been here before, but this time everything felt sharper, heavier. He signed the logbook, barely noticing the guard's nod. All his focus was locked on what came next. It made sense that the trail led here. The more he thought, the more it felt like no coincidence. The officer handed him clearance. The process felt routine, but Hae-soo carried questions that had no standard answers anymore. Gang Shik-won stepped into the room, confusion on his face. Hae-soo stayed still, watching, waiting to see the cracks. Gang Shik-won tensed up, like he was deciding how much to give away and how much to protect. He leaned forward, trying to figure Hae-soo out. Was he press, family, or just another detective chasing a cold trail? Hae-soo knew he had to say it straight. The moment the name came up, Shik-won's expression sharpened instantly. Anger surfaced, not denial. Something about the accusation struck deeper than expected. He wasn't indifferent. That mattered more than words. Hae-soo stayed calm. The man had nothing to gain. No bribe, no family. Just time, and that made it complicated. The expression on Hae-soo's face didn't waver. He'd seen that look before, too many times. It never lied. Any seasoned detective could spot it, the difference between guilt and a story someone rehearsed until it felt real. That same certainty was why nobody questioned the confession back then. It fit too well into a neat ending. Hae-soo leaned back slightly. Everything pointed one way: Gang didn't kill the congressman. But someone else? That was still on the table. The man across from him snapped. The calm cracked wide open. Hae-soo had pressed the right nerve without saying much. The room erupted as Gang shouted, fists slammed on glass. Truth didn't always stay buried quietly, it lashed out sometimes. The guards moved fast, the visit called off. Hae-soo didn't flinch. The outburst only proved what he already suspected. Gang's palms slammed against the glass, face full of something between frustration and warning. Maybe this wasn't just about murder. Later, Hae-soo walked out with a smirk. He had stirred the hornet's nest, and now something was buzzing. 2 years left on Gang's sentence. But if more people died, then the timeline and the confession weren't adding up anymore. Focus locked in, Hae-soo's instincts kicked up again. That shift in the air always came before something important happened. The motorcycle wove through the lanes like second nature. slicing past traffic as the city stretched out ahead. By nightfall, the squad cars were parked tight outside the station. Everyone clocked out, but Heisu's mind stayed moving. He nodded at the officer beside him. Routine exchanges, another day's work done. But his thoughts were already elsewhere. Heisu walked toward the entrance slowly, the building lit behind him. His shift ended, but something else was starting. The call came just as he was heading out. No rest tonight. The timing was too perfect to ignore. On the other end, Hangsuk's voice came fast, low, urgent, without panic. That kind of tone meant it was real. He listened closely. A gang's location had surfaced. A name he hadn't heard in a while just got louder. The Hook clan. Their reputation hadn't faded, only buried. If they were moving again, things were going to get messy. 1 hour outside the city, in a warehouse. Heisu's focus sharpened. He didn't even ask who else was going. The team gathered in shadows, quiet but ready. Every glance shared between them said more than words could right now. The plan was tight move on signal, cover all angles. Split up, stay sharp, no hesitation once things got loud. Heisu adjusted his gear, breathing steady. He'd worked with enough crews to know which ones were built for chaos. Cavalry would be late by minutes. That was enough to make things risky, but the squad already looked locked in. He joined Team 3 without a word. No second thoughts, no stalling. When the doors opened, they were going in. Heisu followed closely behind the others, eyes moving constantly. Every step forward felt like walking across a frozen lake. Status updates buzzed through comms. Different teams were in position. The next moments would decide how this whole night went. The leader gave a simple reminder: stay alert, stay alive. Everyone nodded, and the tension locked into place. The team crossed over quietly, gear tight, focus tighter. Feet barely made a sound as they passed the fencing. The alley led them deeper. The silence here felt unnatural, like the night was holding its breath with them. Small talk started behind them. Someone trying to break the tension. Jokes always floated up when fear got too loud. Heisu's teammate mentioned marriage, probably a future too close to worry about tonight. Heisu kept moving, scanning ahead without reacting. The question landed, but Heisu kept it short. Personal lives had no place on nights like this. The guy tried again, sharing his own plans. Heisu raised a hand. Too much talking meant someone wasn't ready. He reminded them, gently but firmly, that the field doesn't care about your love story. Focus was everything right now. Heisu had seen too many moments where distraction cost lives. Bad luck came easy to those who let their guard slip. He walked without looking back, not needing to say more. His silence made its point better than anything else could. The team circled up again, ready to split. Orders were quick, movements smoother now. The jitters had finally passed. Heisu and one teammate were sent right, flanking the building. The air grew colder as they crept down the wall. Each step closer raised the stakes. Heisu's eyes locked on the structure ahead. Whatever was inside, they were ready now. A quiet exchange passed between them. No words needed, just a nod, a breath, and the click of readiness. The story spilled out like a war tale. Twisted memories turned into bold claims. It wasn't bragging, it was trauma. The inmate laughed it off, like it was all fiction. But some things don't come from imagination. Inside the warehouse, fists flew. Heisu moved fast. No hesitation, no second guessing, just years of instinct leading the charge. The blow landed hard. No time to check the damage. Just move. Always move, or you don't make it. Heisu and the others swept upstairs, clearing corners like clockwork. No banter now, just steps, breath, and tightening grip. The hallway led them deeper in. The lights buzzed, and every turn felt like something could jump out. A red light flashed near the door, emergency exit locked. Someone didn't want anyone running tonight. A sudden shout broke the stillness. They were spotted. Plans shifted instantly, no time to think. Only react. Voices echoed behind them, angry and close. Heisu didn't look back. He only picked up speed toward the sound. The warehouse spread wide, steel echoing every step. Heisu scanned quickly. Any shadow could be a trap waiting to snap. The gang regrouped below, searching. Panic mixed with rage in their shouts. They weren't used to being hunted. Heisu's cover wouldn't hold forever. He eyed the metal beams above. One wrong move, they'd be boxed in fast. He motioned to shift position, quiet but clear. Getting pinned in a narrow hallway could turn this into a grave. One hand checked the gun, the other stayed steady. Heisu glanced over. He wouldn't ask again, he needed that backup loaded. Heisu checked the weight of his pistol. 2 bullets left. Not great odds, but he'd made do with worse. His partner confirmed it, barely anything loaded. But there was no hesitation. The target ahead didn't deserve second chances anyway. Heisu raised his weapon. Calm voice, steady hand. One last warning. If they moved wrong, things would turn fast. His grip tightened as the target smirked. Empty threats never worked on people like this. They fed on fear. The man stepped forward, grinning. He clearly wasn't planning to cooperate. Heisu knew it, this was going to end hard. Finger ready, Heisu aimed straight. He could end it right there. One clean shot would stop everything cold. He pulled the trigger, nothing. Silence. The weapon jammed. Of all moments, it had to happen now. Time stretched. His expression didn't change, but his heart jumped. 1 second could flip the whole balance. The men in front laughed like the fear gave them life. They were used to chaos, not afraid of it. One of them charged. No tactics, just rage. Jesus adjusted his stance. If he couldn't shoot, he'd finish it with fists. Jesus dropped the gun mid-motion. It wasn't dead weight anymore, it was useless. His hands were the only weapons left. No more room for restraint. These weren't suspects, they were wolves who'd already made their choice. He surged forward, striking first. The man barely saw it coming. Jesus never wasted movement when things turned real. A second followed fast. Jesus ducked low and drove up hard, his timing perfect, honed by more nights like this. More shadows approached fast, their feet pounding the ground. Jesus squared up again, knowing this fight was far from over. Jesus landed another clean hit. No hesitation. His rhythm was sharp, controlled. He fought like someone with nothing left to lose. The second guy collapsed before he even understood what happened. Jesus didn't stop moving. Momentum mattered more than strength now. One man hesitated, wide-eyed. Fear was setting in, but it was too late to run from what they'd started. Jesus barely looked up as another body dropped. It wasn't about fury, it was method, precision. His teammates stepped up, breath unshaken, requesting the rest be taken alive if possible. Jesus didn't answer, he just nodded once. The radio call broke the silence, something wasn't right. Jesus picked up on it instantly. The tone was off. Copy demon. The name came over the line. Jesus froze. That wasn't just a rumor, it was a warning. The real target wasn't these thugs. Jesus understood now. They were just the noise hiding something worse beneath it all. His eyes narrowed. The deeper mission wasn't about clearing a warehouse, it was hunting the real monster wearing a man's skin. Jesus clenched his fists. If this mission was about stopping that one man, then it had only just begun. Comms erupted in static and panic. Someone was down. Maybe more. Jesus' heart dropped. Was it already too late? His fingers gripped the radio tighter. Every second wasted was a step lost to whoever they were actually chasing. There was no time to think it through. He had to move before the situation turned into a mess. Voices screamed from around the corner, gang members pointing, panicked, shouting. They weren't running from Jesus, they were running from someone else. Jesus launched forward, no backup in sight. He needed to catch this figure before it all spiraled beyond reach. Jesus stepped in, reading the thug's movement like a pattern. One strike dropped the man flat, no time to gloat. A second came at him full force. Jesus dodged low, snapped up, and ended it in a single blow. The sound of impact echoed bone, boot, pavement. Jesus didn't flinch. He'd already turned toward the next fight. The last one tried to run. Jesus didn't. One step, two, and he caught up with ease. He stood tall now, surrounded by unconscious bodies. But there was no relief. The air still felt wrong, off balance. Behind him, 2 officers froze in fear, not because of Jesus, but because of someone else walking in from darkness. The newcomer laughed softly, too calm. Jesus turned, instinct already telling him this was different from the others. That grin wasn't just confidence, it was practiced. A face worn by someone who'd seen death up close and smiled. He mocked them all, stepping forward like he owned the night. The injured were bait. The hostage was leverage. Jesus clenched his fists. No backup close enough. One wrong move, and this guy would cut everything to pieces. The man's blade glinted under the floodlights. His question was rhetorical. Jesus knew he couldn't beat a knife in speed. Still, he charged in, eyes locked. The flash of steel followed too fast. Blood sprayed and time nearly stopped. A voice echoed in Jesus' mind. Cold, certain, not now. This couldn't end here. He whispered the word reset. Light warped, time rewound. The world shifted. Blood reversed. The blade hadn't landed. The moment had been rewound. Somewhere in the distance, another officer raced forward on a bike. Unaware of how time had just been rewritten, from above the group moved in tight formation. Jesus' eyes scanned ahead, already calculating where the next threat might be hiding. Someone mumbled about the pressure, too quiet, too tense. Then came the same question as before, trying to break nerves. Jesus didn't even flinch. No room for personal talk in an op like this. He shut it down fast. Still calm, he made his plan clear. He had to reach the target's location before the trail ran cold. The others followed, the mood now serious. Jesus' urgency was clear. Every delay gave the enemy time to shift. The group split off, scanning the perimeter. 1 turn, 2 turns, and suddenly the trail was gone. Something wasn't right. One officer blinked, confused. The room was supposed to hold their guy. Instead, they were met with empty space. Jesus didn't hesitate. He broke off into a sprint. Time rewound or not, he wasn't letting anyone slip again. The others called after him, trying to catch up. Jesus was already too far ahead, tracking on instinct. Around the corner, more figures appeared, unfamiliar ones. The real threat was still here, just better hidden than they expected. Jesus struck hard, not slowing down. The first man didn't even get to react before hitting the wall behind him. Blood sprayed. The second man stumbled, wide-eyed. Jesus didn't even pause. His movements were fast, brutal, calculated. Behind him, one officer watched in disbelief. No one trained them for this. Not to move like that. Jesus was already gone, disappearing toward the next objective. His strength was unnerving, almost unnatural. He stopped just long enough to turn and ask, calm as ever, if he could borrow a gun. Gun? The officer looked confused. Jesus didn't pause, just asked, calm as ever, and extended his hand like clockwork. He explained his was jammed. No room for argument. He handed over the situation and stepped forward without hesitation. Jesus moved fast, already clearing distance. Every step was confident he trusted the team to hold their end. One officer blinked, watching him disappear into the night. That kind of presence left people wondering if they missed something bigger. Jesus was already locked in again. No hesitation, just motion and purpose as his target drew closer with each step. In a corner of the lot, another officer was struggling, trapped in a grip that screamed rage, not desperation. Blood stained the concrete. The attacker's face twisted with fury, eyes full of something beyond logic. The injured officer muttered a name copy demon, his voice shaking with pain and anger. Jesus' eyes scanned the scene as he closed in. The enemy was faster than expected, and closing fast. He darted left, feet slamming the ground with a burst of speed. There wasn't time to waste, not anymore. Ahead, the target was already on the run, blades in hand, fast and reckless. Jesus pushed forward, not blinking once. He dropped low beside a downed officer, quickly checking. They'd live, but the wound wasn't clean. His name was called. Jesus gave a small nod in return, but his mind had already locked onto pursuit. The signal was clear, danger was rising. His feet moved before thought could catch up, adrenaline sinking to instinct. Just ahead, the one they'd been chasing turned, eyes fly. Jesus clenched his fists. This wasn't just a fight now. Jesus ducked and dodged, reading every move like a book. The enemy's attacks were fast, but not fast enough. He moved with clean precision. The moment stretched long. Everything else faded. Only one thought remained: he had to end it. His jaw tightened, no more holding back. If this was going to end, it had to be by his hands. He burst forward, landing the first strike. The impact was clean, but not enough. The copy demon was still laughing. The sound chilled the air. That laugh wasn't fear, it was confidence. Something about it said this wasn't over yet. Jesus raised the gun, breath steady, eyes sharp. This time, no hesitation. One good shot might end everything. The bullet cut through the air but missed. The target was already shifting, like he knew it was coming. Blood trickled, but not enough to slow him. The man smiled again, mocking. The kind of grin you don't forget. Jesus cursed under his breath. Trying to keep him alive made everything harder. This wasn't a normal takedown, it was something else. In the timeline before the reset, Jesus remembered the copy demon had no help. This time, the rules had changed. His smile twisted as he gripped the blade tighter. Bloodied, unshaken, he welcomed the chaos like it was home. Jesus charged in fast, not wasting a second. His body moved on instinct, trained for chaos in tight corners. A clean shot landed, but the guy didn't flinch. Blood poured, yet his twisted grin said he enjoyed it. The moment froze. Jesus' gut screamed something was off. That look, it wasn't fear, it was something colder. A blade flew from the shadows. Jesus barely dodged, pulse racing. Everything was happening faster than he could think. No time to analyze. He had to act now. His window was closing, and hesitation would only get him killed. Jesus struck first, slamming his elbow straight into the guy's jaw. Momentum carried him forward, no space for error. The man staggered, spun, but swung again blindly. He was clearly trained, but his rage made him reckless. Jesus countered with sharp precision, landing a clean punch. Years of fieldwork compressed into a few explosive seconds. Another body flew into the fight, face torn, blood dripping. The situation spiraled faster than Jesus had expected. Everything around him blurred, but his focus sharpened. He felt it in his bones, this was just beginning. A searing pain hit his side, but Jesus stayed grounded. Pain was fuel now, not something that slowed him. Around him, bodies lay still. One officer stared, shocked by the chaos that unfolded faster than anyone could react. Jesus scanned the scene. It wasn't pretty. The mission had gone sideways, but he kept his cool through it all. Above, another attacker dropped fast, blade overhead, aiming to end it. Jesus moved instinctively, calculating distance before the knife could land. Arms locked midair. Jesus' expression didn't waver. The fight kept pulling him deeper, and he refused to step back now. Jesus' grip faltered for a second. The wound slowed him down, but his head stayed sharp, eyes reading everything. He focused his last bit of strength into a single motion, knowing the pain would follow right after. Blood dripped, hands trembling. Every nerve fired warnings, but Jesus pushed forward, ignoring the burn and staying on target. His opponent's stare changed, confusion broke through the confidence. That was all Jesus needed to take his opening. With a clean swing and perfect balance, he landed the hit he'd been waiting for since the fight started. The hit connected hard, knocking the guy sideways. Jesus stayed grounded, chest heaving, sweat and blood mixing across his face. Steps echoed around him. Backup was still far, but he kept moving, knowing the next attack would be worse. The fight turned wild fists and limbs flying, a blur of movement on instinct, less thought, more survival. Another hit dropped the guy. Concrete cracked, bones possibly too. Jesus didn't slow down, not for a second. Through the dust, Jesus kept his stance low. Another opponent raised a weapon, and Jesus was already winding up again. The force of Jesus' punch shook the ground. He didn't just fight to win, he fought like he meant it. One attacker laughed, bloodied but still standing, like the pain didn't register anymore. The air felt heavier now. Jesus took a step forward, catching his breath. The cold wind bit through his shirt, but not his resolve. He dropped to one knee, body finally asking for rest, but the job wasn't finished yet. Not while danger lingered. Sirens echoed in the distance. Help was on the way, but Jesus stood tall, already preparing for what came next. The night sky hung over Daesung Hospital, clouds heavy as the city tried to breathe again after the storm. Jesus lay unconscious, machines quietly beeping. His body rested, but the fight still echoed behind closed eyes. News of the gang's downfall spread quickly. The city finally had space to exhale after weeks of unrest. The operation was a success, but it came with injuries. The scene had been chaos wrapped in courage. Jesus became a symbol, a name whispered with gratitude. Even asleep, he carried the weight of the fight. He woke slowly, light flooding his vision. The world felt distant but alive. He was still here, still breathing. A familiar face appeared by the bed, relief written across his posture more than his words ever could. No officers were lost. Somehow they pulled through. The thought offered comfort against the aching still buried in his ribs. Recovery wouldn't be fast, but it was promised. A reward, a promotion, but all Jesus felt was exhaustion. He gave a nod of thanks, but guilt stayed close. The chaos had left behind more than bruises. The question lingered: what happened to the one they called Copy Demon? Some evils don't fade without a trace. Answers came with a shrug. That man was still breathing, locked away, sleeping like nothing ever happened. Jesus didn't know what to feel. Relief? Dread? The idea of him waking felt worse than the wounds. Alone again, Jesus stared out the window. Questions circled in his head, some heavier now than during the fight. If he hadn't been there, how many wouldn't have made it? That silence weighed more than any injury. A mustached visitor burst into the room, too loud for Jesus' aching head. Everything still felt foggy from the meds. Jesus sat up, groaning at the noise. The banana milk in his hand made the situation feel even weirder. He glanced around, wondering how banana milk became his official recovery drink. The little things always made the moment stranger. A knock cut through the room. Footsteps followed, but Jesus' friend froze. Someone unexpected was about to enter. As the door opened, expressions changed. The presence that stepped in wasn't someone you'd expect during quiet hospital hours. Jesus' eyes narrowed. This visit wasn't just casual. Her timing, her posture, it all felt like a move. The room shifted in energy. Her calm presence seemed to carry a kind of silent weight no one questioned. She smiled politely, but it was the kind of smile that always hinted there was more beneath the surface. Jesus sat straighter. The conversation wasn't going to stay light for long. He could already feel questions coming his way. Without wasting time, she pointed something out: he hadn't been on duty. That detail wasn't lost on her. Jesus blinked. She had done her homework. This wasn't just concern, it was an interview wrapped in a visit. She leaned in slightly, now fully business. No warm-up, no fluff, just an offer laid out plainly on the table. She wanted to sponsor him. Money, influence, protection, the kind of backing few cops ever saw in their careers. As part of Daesung Group, her offer came with power. Whatever he needed, she claimed she could provide without limits. Jesus stared, caught off guard. This wasn't where he expected the day to go, not even close. Jesus pushed back gently, asking for her real reason. Offers like this always came with strings, even if unspoken. Her smile didn't fade. She answered casually, as if it were obvious the country was broken and needed fixing. Jesus watched her closely. Her calm confidence left no room for argument. It was conviction, or something else entirely. Then she added, "It's good for business too." Morals and marketing walking the same line, strangely enough. Jesus stayed silent. That blend of ambition and strategy was hard to read. But nothing about her felt accidental. She brought up the headlines, the market reaction, the boost in stocks. Even public chaos had its silver linings. He couldn't argue with facts. But a corporate cop? That path was slippery. Once you start, it sticks. She anticipated that. Assured him their foreign branches were clean. Told him to verify it himself. There was just one catch: her group's name had to be attached to every case they helped support. It seemed simple on the surface, but Jesus knew even small strings could pull big consequences if tugged hard enough. Jesus didn't fully trust her, but extended his hand anyway. Sometimes you move forward before certainty shows up. She called him cool as ever, grinning as if they'd sealed something much bigger than a basic partnership. He declined the very important person treatment, said he needed to stay near the one who started it all, Copy Demon. She wasn't thrilled, but compromised. Both would be moved, no matter how odd the request sounded to others. Haesoo lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. He wondered if An Seo-eun's words carried truth or strategy. The room fell into a calm silence. Moonlight slipped through the blinds as Haesoo drifted into light, cautious sleep. A soft creak broke the stillness. Shadows moved across the floor. Someone had entered without permission or sound. Grunts followed. Two men struggled to lift a body. One cursed under his breath, clearly not used to this. The name Steel Clan slipped out. Haesoo's eyes opened slowly. His instincts sharpened the second he recognized that group. His voice cut through the dark, calm but cold. The intruders froze, realizing they weren't alone and definitely caught. Haesoo shot up from the bed, ignoring the pain. Adrenaline surged. The moment demanded action, not rest or recovery. Chaos broke out fast. The intruders scattered with urgency, but one barked orders: take the target and move, now. They yanked the unconscious man across the floor, urgency outweighing grace. Haesoo watched, piecing together their plan in seconds. The leader turned, eyes hard, explaining this was personal. No cops involved, just revenge dressed up as duty. Haesoo nodded. He understood the weight behind their words. But understanding didn't mean he planned to stay out. Grabbing a metal rod from beside the bed, Haesoo stood. If they wanted a fight, he'd bring it fully. He lunged forward. Every muscle screamed, but his will overpowered the pain. He'd trained for worse. Tonight wasn't stopping him. A swing, perfectly timed, cracked the first thug's defense. The others jumped back, surprised by his speed and resolve. One lunged, but Haesoo shifted low and countered, sending the guy Haesoo into a tray cart without hesitation. Fists collided in rapid succession. Haesoo moved like someone who had nothing left to lose and no reason to hold back. A final blow knocked the next attacker cold. Haesoo stood in the middle, breathing heavy but never backing down. Two more approached with pipes in hand. Haesoo glanced at the window behind them, already calculating positions in his head. One shouted. The other asked him to look away just once, as if Haesoo ever missed openings like that. Instead, Haesoo launched forward, twisting past the first swing and closing the gap faster than either expected. The punch landed square. Haesoo felt the shock rattle up his arm, but the guy dropped instantly. Without slowing down, Haesoo slammed the second one against the wall. His body moved, but his mind stayed razor sharp. Haesoo charged forward without hesitation, slamming his shoulder into the guy like a train that missed all its stops. The impact echoed down the hall, lights flickering as the guy's body crumpled like cardboard against the cold metal wall. With his breathing steady, Haesoo checked the hallway ahead, already planning his next move before anyone else could react. He sprinted hard, the hospital gown flapping, footsteps sharp, each one closing the gap toward the next problem waiting below. His mind spun with warnings, remembering the words whispered earlier. Things go to hell if that monster wakes up. Muscles tensed. He tore through the stairwell, chasing speed like it was the only friend he could trust today. One goal burned in his chest: beat the elevator, stop the transfer, and keep that monster from Vanihesug again. Downstairs, a few men were shifting uneasily, unaware the storm they'd packed away was already coming down fast. Haesoo slid across the tiled floor, eyes scanning for threats. He knew the van downstairs would be their only exit. Elevator numbers dropped, each beep louder than the last. This moment could split everything wide open if he failed. Before he could react, the body slumped in restraints, twitched sharply, fingers curling like something snapped awake inside. In a flash, the restrained man broke free, slamming his elbow into the guard's face with terrifying precision. Haesoo's eyes widened, but he moved quick, grabbing, dodging, barely avoiding the full force of another bone-breaking hit. The hallway exploded in noise as bodies hit walls, and Haesoo pushed through the chaos, chasing time and answers. Elevator chimed behind him, but he was already gone, heart pounding, lungs aching. Every step Haesoo fate 1 inch further. The elevator doors split open slowly, revealing the man everyone thought was down for good. That calm was gone. Hair clinging to his face, blood drying, he stepped out like nothing hurt, like waking up was part of it. Haesoo stared ahead, tense. He knew what this guy could do. He wasn't dealing with normal anymore. Thoughts rushed in. This was bad. They never should have let this one move, not even an inch. Haesoo braced himself, ready to activate everything he had left. Resetting time might be the only way out. But nothing happened. His hands trembled. The reset wasn't working. It was like the ability vanished when he needed it most. Panic simmered as confusion grew. That ability had saved him every time. Why was it silent now? Why now? The man laughed, stepping closer with a hammer in hand, eyes Haesoo with something primal and sick. Haesoo backed off, heart pounding, calculating his options. No weapons, no time trick, just fists and instinct left. The man taunted him, calm as ever, while raising the hammer, no hesitation, just waiting to see what Haesoo did. Without warning, the guy sprinted forward like a missile, hammer raised high, swinging down hard with everything he had. Jesus didn't flinch. He ducked low and moved quick, redirecting the blow as the weapon cracked against metal. The hallway shook with each clash. Every hit had purpose. Every dodge shaved seconds from what little time remained. In a blur, Jesus landed a blow to the ribs, but it wasn't enough. His opponent didn't even flinch. Blood ran down his arm, but Jesus gritted his teeth and struck again, refusing to fall before understanding everything. Jesus' eyes locked in, face bruised, but focus sharp. He wasn't done until someone stopped breathing. His opponent smirked, stepping in with a slow, taunting rhythm that made Jesus grind his teeth hard. Their bodies collided mid-swing, fists and knees flying like they'd fought each other 100 times before. The mocking tone echoed, "Why so slow?" But Jesus wasn't trying to be fast. He was buying himself something better. As the man laughed again, Jesus' eyes darted sideways. The elevator, he needed that door to open now. He turned, fast hammer swing catching the air just inches away. Close. Too close. This wasn't going to last. They clashed again, Jesus slipping low, fist jabbing up, finally drawing blood from the man who wouldn't shut up. The guy stumbled back, cursing loud, realizing too late he'd finally underestimated someone who wasn't bluffing for once. Jesus surged forward, jaw clenched, putting everything into one brutal hit that cracked across ribs and shook the floor. Blood splattered from the man's mouth as he staggered. Jesus' grip tightened. This wasn't mercy. This was the warning. A hook slammed hard, knocking the man into the mirrored wall, spiderweb cracks blooming behind his dazed expression. He stood frozen, no comeback, just silence and a cracked reflection of who he thought he was. Jesus picked up the hammer, heavy in his hand. For once, the weight felt completely in place. Looking down at the trembling figure, Jesus knew hesitation would cost more than time. It had cost lives. Calmly now, he raised the blade. One hand was all he needed to take control of everything again. The building settled back into quiet, but inside, whispers were spreading about what just happened between those two. Officers leaned in, eyes wide, watching the footage like it was a movie they couldn't believe was real. One questioned everything. How could Jesus move like that in that condition? It didn't make sense anymore. They rewound the footage again, jaws tight as they watched the clean strike fold the wild man instantly. Jesus didn't fight like a cop. He fought like someone who'd been hunted more times than he could count. The guys in the room didn't say much after that. They all knew this wasn't just some street case. The Steel Clan members who tried to retaliate were hauled in one by one, silent and broken. The copy demon, whatever he really was, got shipped to a place where escape was basically just a fantasy. Some clan members didn't survive the fallout. It was bloody, ugly, and far from clean. But it ended. Jesus returned to the hospital, alone again, letting the quiet settle. Victory always came with this kind of silence. The memory lingered. His opponent's wild grin burned into his thoughts, like a warning that hadn't fully played out yet. Jesus clenched his fists, uneasy. If that guy wasn't injured, would he still be standing here right now? Something else gnawed at him. Why didn't the reset work? Everything should have aligned. The timing, the danger, the need. He stared into the hallway, piecing it together slowly. Maybe the power wasn't broken. Maybe something else interfered entirely.